Ready to go. Good evening and welcome. I'm Cindy Condon. The time is now 3:32. I would like to call the January 15th, 2026 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Cindy Condon,
Here.
Marcy Grail,
Here.
Kent Howe,
Here.
Richard Devlin, Richard Devlin. Do you know if Councilmember Devlin is on?
Hello?
Okay,
Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
Uh,
we can hear you. Thank you, Councilmember Devlin.
okay.
And Patty Perry.
Here, if you can hear me.
We can, thank you. Chair Condon, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, are there any agenda modifications?
Chair Condon, there are no agenda modifications at this time.
So we'll just get
A little bit closer.
a little bit closer. How's this?
Yep, good.
I have the following announcements. For council members and anyone addressing the council, please remember to state your name clearly and please do not use the speaker phone feature as it will create feedback. Please mute your phones, and if you are joining us by phone and receive a phone call, please hang up from this call and dial back if after finishing your other call. For those signed in onto the webinar, please do not broadcast your webcam. For agenda item C, public comment period, and agenda item F, the Bigelow Canyon Amendment 4 public hearing, there are 3 ways to let us know you are interested in providing comments to the council. 1, for those in person, please fill out a registration card and submit to Nancy Hatch, who is our administrator. 2, for those using the WebEx, you will need to use the raise your hand feature. 3, for those on the phone only, you will need to press *3, which will alert us that you want to speak, and Nancy Hatch will unmute you as necessary. We will go over these options again during that agenda item. If you want to receive future email notifications of council meetings, project milestones, or rulemakings through our Click Dimensions program, you can do so by clicking on the link in the agenda or on the council webpage. Look for the green box on the right-hand side of the page that says sign up for emails updates. You are also welcome to access the online project mapping tool and any documents by visiting our website. Please note that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the council's website following the meeting. Energy Facility Siting Council meetings shall be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner where everyone is allowed to state their positions at the appropriate times consistent with council rules and procedures. Willful, accusatory, offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, or slanderous comments which disrupt the council meeting are not acceptable. Pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 345-011-0080, any person who engages in unacceptable conduct which disrupts the meeting may be expelled. So first on our agenda is the consent calendar. And this is an action item, approval of the November 21st, 2025 meeting minutes.
Chair Condon,
Yes. Councilor Howe,
I move that the council approve the minutes of the November 21, 2025 meeting as presented and recommended by staff.
do we have a second online?
Chair Condon, this is Marcy. I second that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Grail.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was not present for this meeting, so I'll be abstaining.
Thank you, Councilor Devlin. Mr. Secretary, can you please call the roll or for the vote?
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Patty Perry,
Yes.
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Marcy Grail.
Yes.
Motion carries, Chair Condon.
Thank you, councilors. And now for the council secretary report.
Thank you, Chair Condon. Give me 1 second. I'm going to first start with project updates. So the first project update is the Well Springs project. So we received the notice of intent for that project on January 2nd. The project would be a 750 megawatt solar PV project with 500 megawatts of battery storage on approximately 7,365 acres or 11 square miles. The project location is in Morrow County, approximately 5 miles northwest of the town of Ione. The parent company is Emanate, and that's capital M, capital N, and then the number 8, Energy Development Company, LLC. The department's project webpage will be live tomorrow. This is a fairly new project, so project page will be up tomorrow. And we anticipate sending the public notice of the receipt of the notice of intent and a comment period by next week as well. That is also a reminder for at least state employees that Monday is the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. So we won't be working on Monday, but we will try to get to it after that.
This is Kent. Did you say that was Morrow County?
Yeah, that's in
Okay.
Morrow County. So, I mean, generally, if you can kind of picture where the Boardman bombing range is.
Yeah.
And so if you go kind of south of the Boardman bombing range, kind of south and to the west of it.
Okay.
So it's, I described it as sort of 5 miles northwest of Ione, and that's correct. But it's also kind of southwest of the Boardman bombing range. So.
Thank you.
The next update is the Sunstone Solar Project. So at the November council meeting, there was a discussion regarding the parent company of the Sunstone Solar Project going into bankruptcy. So they were planning on submitting an amendment to split the site certificate. They withdrew that. And there was some conversation that we had kind of they explaining kind of all of that. So as a reminder what that project is, it was approved by council in November of 2024. It includes 1,200 megawatts of solar, 1,200 megawatts of battery storage, and it would be on approximately 9,442 acres or 14.75 square miles. That's also in Morrow County. On Tuesday, I sent council members an article that Amazon won the bid to purchase the facility, although I just found out that I think you need a login to be able to access that. So my apology. We'll follow up with that with the information from the article, and we'll just copy and paste that and put it into a email so you can see that. But I mean, again, Amazon won the bid for that, and they are now, I don't know if now they're the owner, but they are essentially going to become the owner. But as we discussed at the November meeting, just as a reminder, the Sunstone can sell it to them and Amazon can buy it. But until Amazon comes in and requests and receives approval for a site certificate transfer amendment, they can't do anything with the project. So again, a site certificate is functionally a business contract between the state of Oregon, FSEC on behalf of the state of Oregon, and the developer. We currently do not have any business relationship with Amazon for this project. That will have to be established first before they can move forward on doing anything related to the site certificate. Next project is the Saddle Butte Energy Facility. So at the December council meeting, I let you know that we have received the notice of intent for that project. This would be a 488 megawatt wind energy project consisting of up to 70 wind turbines, each up to 698 feet tall. I'll say that again, 698 feet tall. There would also be 488 megawatts of battery storage. The project location is in Gillum County, approximately 6 miles southwest of the city of Arlington. The parent company is Brookfield Renewables. They own the Shepherd's Flats facilities. So it's kind of in range, geographic range of those facilities. Since the December meeting, we have set up a project page. It's available. We provided public notice, and then we held a public information meeting in Condon on Tuesday. And the public comment period on the notice of intent concludes on January 30th. Next is the Speedway Energy Facility. So like the Saddle Butte Energy Facility, at the December council meeting, I let you know that we received the notice of intent for that project. That would be a 1,400 megawatt solar PV and wind project, and including 500 megawatts of battery storage. The project is located generally southeast and northeast of exactly where we're at right now. So if you look, kind of in these directions of this building, it would be all around this building, maybe not on that side, but all around where we're exactly at right now. The parent company also is Brookfield Renewable, same as the Saddle Butte Energy Facility. And we had a public, we had a public information meeting in this room last night. And the notice of intent concludes on January 23rd. So it's been a bit of a busy week in terms of meetings and hearings and getting on the road. Next is the Yellow Rosebush facility. So the Yellow Rosebush Energy Facility. So this would be 800 megawatts of solar PV, 800 megawatts of battery storage on approximately 8,000 acres, about 12 square miles. The project location is in Wasco and Sherman counties, east of the city of Maupin. The developer is Savion LLC, which is a division of the Royal Dutch Shell Company. At the November meeting, the council reviewed the draft proposed order and all comments that were made or that were received, and provided direction to staff to make changes in the proposed order, which we did. And we issued the proposed order and included also a notice of opportunity to request to participate in the contested case. That's a mouthful, but I think it bears clarifying. Frequently people say they've asked for a contested case. There is a contested case with every application. It is an automatic step in the process. The distinction is if anybody requests to participate in it. And we did have 2 requests to participate in the contested case. So at this point, that has gone to the, we contract with the Office of Administrative Hearings. They provide a contested case or a hearing officer for us for that. And that hearing officer will be the one that's evaluating those requests for contested case to make sure that they justify participation. And so, if there wasn't any request for participation in the contested case, we would have had the council's review of the final decision tonight. But that will take some time. So we'll keep you up to date on that, and that will certainly be updated in my secretary report as well as in the monthly siting report. Next is the Leaning Juniper 2A amendment determination. So on December 21st, the department issued its determination. We received a request for an amendment determination, and that was that their request was that they wouldn't have to go through the amendment process. So the changes that they were proposing wouldn't trigger an amendment. And the changes proposed included a tax equity sale leaseback transaction with certificate holder and a national financial institution under which that institution would acquire the legal title to certain facility equipment as personal property and simultaneously lease that equipment back to the certificate holder under a long-term lease. So the department's determination was based on an evaluation of Oregon Administrative Rule 345, Division 27, 0350, and those are the factors where an amendment is required, and none of those factors triggered. We've had this kind of request previously, I believe, one time and made the same determination. However, because this is a determination, that an amendment is not required, council has the opportunity to request that that be brought forth to council as an agenda item where you would review it, and you could then come to your own conclusion whether you agree or disagree with that determination.
Just raised my hand myself. Thank you, Secretary Cornett. Question about that. And I am not sure about the review necessary, but this is the second time we've had something similar come up. And I'd like to make sure we understand what it, as these get more complicated in terms of the structure, that we understand kind of the full responsibility associated with it and how it plays out over time. I mean, I understand the words that you're using, but I'm not sure what it means to us versus what it means to the company itself. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to do it, not necessarily to review the decision of the department, but to really understand why the decision was made, or how the decision was made based on your understanding of the risks associated or long-term process for it.
Mhm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is something either, again, this particular one, it's totally within council's authority to say, we want to take a look at this ourselves. We want to take a, review it, and we would then put it on a future council meeting, and then we would provide, our analysis, well, their request, their analysis, our request or our determination, our analysis to you, and you could come up to your own conclusions and certainly ask us more questions, and then the certificate holder more questions about it as well. That's an opportunity. We've looked at it. We don't believe that it triggers an amendment as those rules kind of require right now. This is also the second time, I believe, I'm going to look at Sarah. Yeah, second time that we've seen this. We don't know if there's going to be a pattern or not. So this could also be, outside of this specific action, this could be determination. I won't say action, I'll say determination. We could do this in the future as an information item where we explore this sort of outside the context of a request.
It's hard to do head nods in the room, about whether we want to do it or not. I know I would like at least an informational
Mhm.
session on it, especially as we're looking at organizational expertise standard and financial assurance
Mhm.
standard. To me, that all fits together. Counselor Howe, any?
Secretary Kernet, you said you bring it to us once you've made your determination.
That's what I'm doing now. So the way the amendment determination process works is, and a site certificate holder is not obligated to use this process.
Yeah.
It's to their benefit. They could make some choice, put it in their annual report and include that as a sort of a facility modification. We would then review that. And then the risk is that if we determine, no, that should have been an amendment, well, they've already made these changes. They then are forced to come back in. So it's to their benefit that they, frequently choose this method, which is to get some, validation,
Right.
kind of officially that, an amendment is not required. And so, what they do is they make their case. They say, here's the requirements of when an amendment is required. This is what we're proposing. Presumably they're going to say, we don't believe this triggers these things. We then review that ourselves. And then the requirement is at the next council meeting after we make our determination, I provide this update to you. And then again, your ability is to either say, yeah, that sounds great. Or if you're like, we really want to take a look at this ourselves and we want to do the evaluation of all of that information, that's absolutely within your authority.
I myself am fine with the staff evaluation as
This is Marcy, and I agree with Councilmember Howe. I'm fine with the staff evaluation as well.
And just to clarify, I'm fine with the decision. It's the information that an informational item that I'm asking about, not necessarily related to this project, but how these structures, they're different. And how they work in a project for both the developer and the state.
So, yeah, I mean, we could absolutely put it on the list for a future council meeting if you want to do it as an information item.
as an information item that doesn't hold this up.
Yes.
Then that sounds fine to me.
Sure. Sorry, Nancy, can we turn the heat down a little bit? It's starting to get warm right here.
In here. Councilor Devlin or Perry, any thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Chair Condon. I would be interested, as you are, with the information, making it an informational item on one of our agendas to just understand a little bit more about that process. I totally agree with, allowing the staff to be able to make those, or the reviewing body review those requests as appropriate. And I would just like to know how they do that.
Counselor Devlin?
I would actually concur with those statements. I would be fine with having a presentation about the process. But I mean, ultimately, the process, I think, should stay at the staff level to make that determination.
So just, sorry for the record, Todd Cornett, just for clarification, my understanding was not the amendment determination process and how that works, but it was more specifically this specific type of request,
Yes.
the sale leaseback
Yes.
of equipment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Which was the previous one as well, with the
Correct.
sale and leaseback.
Yes.
So, yeah. I think we're all in agreement.
Okay, we'll make a note of that.
Information.
Nancy, can you put a note of that for a future agenda item? Thank you. Okay, moving on to compliance updates. So, as I've indicated before, the way that the annual reports work is so for, in this case, the 2024 annual reports, every certificate holder has to submit a report annually. The ones that they did for the calendar year 2024 have to be submitted, most of them by the end of April 2025. So then that gives us the time to start working and reviewing those. We're getting to the end of those reviews. Didn't quite finish. We've done all of the initial reviews. We've requested some additional information from some of the certificate holders to provide additional information to clarify that they meet conditions. We're still waiting to hear from some back, but we're getting close to concluding those, which is great. Having more staff resources is hugely beneficial. But I do have two quick updates on two of the Shepherd's Flats facilities. So the Shepherd's Flat Central, again, we kind of talked about that, Brookfield in Gillum County, just to the south of Arlington. That's a 265 megawatt facility. It's been in operation since 2012. And with regards to their meeting their conditions, I provided an update on Shepherd's Flat Central last council meeting. It's really, these are the same things. There have been sort of persistent issues with weed control and revegetation management since construction or reconstruction of initial construction of the process or the project, and then also following the 2019 repower. So they know that, we know that, they're working on it. We're, being clear with them. So we're looking for more information. Yes, thank you. I meant to say, turn it on there. And yeah, that won't be concluded until 2026. It's just, I know we're in 2026 now, but it'll take a while because there's some pretty significant, sort of detailed information that has to be evaluated and provided. So, but as I said, they're diligently working on it. We're diligently working on it. And we do believe that we can kind of come up to speed on those in 2026. Shepherd's Flat South, kind of similar. That's a 290 megawatt facility located in Gillum and Morrow counties, also operational since 2012. The majority of the site is under cultivation for wheat production, but the site also has had persistent weed control and revegetation kind of management issues. So really the same thing as the other one. They're diligently working on it, and we do expect to have that all concluded in 2026. Okay, next on my list is Executive Order 2529. So I brought this up at I don't know, was it the last council meeting or the one previous to that? So Governor Kotek issued this executive order in November. This order requires the Department of Energy to undertake several directives in coordination with other state agencies. And it includes 2 required studies to be submitted to the governor by September 1st of 2026. And these studies are being led by our P&I division, Policy and Innovation, and also us to some degree. And I'll indicate what that means in a second. So for one of the studies, Odo is directed to inventory, assess, and analyze barriers to permitting, construction, and interconnection of clean energy projects and associated infrastructure. For the other study, Odo is directed to evaluate and recommend actions to update siting and permitting processes to facilitate deployment of renewable energy, energy storage, and grid infrastructure. Those are the mandates in the executive order. So we'll be working on this, in the coming months, and we'll be giving you updates as to what we're doing. We will likely be doing some outreach on that as well, but again, we will ultimately have to provide a report to the governor by September. And then, great, next slide, you got it. So we are soon to be entering into the short legislative session. So I've included on this slide, the schedule. Again, it's the short session, so it really isn't very long. That doesn't mean it won't be significant. It just means it's short. And we do already anticipate there being some legislation related to energy facility siting and maybe Energy Facility Siting Council and your statutes specifically. But you can see, the session starts on February 2nd, and then there are always deadlines or bills basically start to die. So bills have to be posted for a work session, then they actually have to have a work session. And if they don't meet those thresholds, then they basically just move out. So there always ends up being like some huge volume of bills, and it starts narrowing down pretty significantly. So you can see the deadlines for the first chamber, and then the deadline for the second chamber, and then March 8th is the constitutional end of session. So it has to be done by then. So like the long session, I'll be providing updates in the monthly siting report and the secretary report. The difference is in the long session, there's a lot more time to sort of understand what's going on and see this. And with a short session, it's February, and by the time we have March, it's done anyway. So there won't be much time. So I might be submitting information to council outside of the monthly siting report and outside of council secretary report at a council meeting, just so you're updated as to what kind of legislation relates to you. Another update, and you're probably not tracking this, but there are now new federal visual accessibility requirements. And these are applicable to all government agencies, state agencies, I believe local governments as well. The purpose of those is to ensure that all people, including with any kind of visual limitations, can access all websites and digital information. So, you go onto a website, and if you have sort of visual impairments, you may not be able to see that information. So now you have pretty sophisticated screen readers and other types of devices that actually can provide, the content to somebody who has, sort of visual limitations. And so by end of April, we have to be compliant with those federal requirements. Agency is moving forward. We're moving forward. BB and Nancy have already been working on templates. Really, this is just a way to kind of make sure that as you're going to start to see some variations and some differences in the PowerPoint presentations. If we have a map or a chart or a graph or a screenshot, there has to be alternative text associated with that, because somebody can't necessarily see that. The screen reader would have to be able to read what that image or what that graph is. So we're just coming up to speed, but we have until April to figure that out. So again, we're already working on it, but just as you'll start to see those changes. And we also will need to provide a handout to anybody who submits slides for the council meeting, or anybody, all of our applicants. They will have to submit information, digital information that meets those requirements as well.
Just a question on that. I presume that the agency gets support from a resource. You're not doing all of the work to get it done. You're not. You are doing.
I mean, it's an enterprise-wide thing. Everybody within the state of Oregon. I'm not sure how much sort of direction and details coming out of the Department of Administrative Services. My understanding is a lot of state agencies are really sort of having to chart this course by themselves for now. I'm sure as anything changes, that sort of change is difficult. Likely we'll see probably more consistency in the future. But my understanding is right now it is largely at the individual agency level.
Interesting. Thank you.
On my list is next council meeting. That will be February 13th, Friday, the 13th. We'll be in Salem, and we only need that Friday meeting. And we anticipate right now that that would end around 1 p.m. So it won't be a very long meeting.
And I will not be at that meeting.
Correct.
I'm just going to say I'm not going to. I was going to try and make it, but I will be absent.
I think being out of the country is is a realistic absence. And that concludes my secretary report, unless any council members have any questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Devlin.
Madam Chair, just a quick question to the secretary. I was looking in previous evenings on the website, and sometimes you can find things on the websites and sometimes you can't. Sometimes they exist, sometimes they don't. But I was trying to look to see if there were any cumulative reports on the compliance side or any cumulative reports on, I think, what we refer to as incident side. What I mean is some way to query, like if you had a particular applicant before you who perhaps had an amendment, not necessarily speaking just about one of the ones we have this today, but where you could actually do a query where you could find out what previous compliance reports have shown and cumulatively what incidents there have been at that site. And if it's not available, that's fine, because I at this point cannot estimate what it would take to actually make it available, other than a member just simply making a specific inquiry.
Yep. Thank you, Councilmember Devlin. Timing is interesting that you asked for this, because we just had a compliance meeting today. The compliance team is working on their presentation for next council meeting, and this is exactly one of the things that we discussed. What are the types of things that the council is interested in either being, presented at a council meeting, in during like the monthly siting report, or in other avenues. I mean, so that information is sort of theoretically available. We'd have to conduct the research and then pull it all together. So we don't have it sort of nice and packaged up right now, but it is a good question. And this is one of the things I want council to think about as the compliance team comes next month. What are you interested in on the compliance side? What do you think the public is interested in from the compliance side? We have the resources now to be able to spend a lot more time and pull that kind of data together. So your question is, can we do that? Absolutely. Can we do that? Could we do that today? No. But this is the kind of stuff will be very helpful to hear about at the next council meeting, so we can start changing that program to have more information available to the council and members of the public. And then also thinking about, as we've initiated the rulemaking for compliance, what kind of rule changes, may or may not relate to some of these questions. We don't have to create rules to do those types of things, but there can be overlap. So I think it will be helpful to be thinking about that. And so I appreciate the timing of your question. It was literally like 3 hours ago. We had a similar type of conversation, so it was very good timing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. And just a comment about that. I think that is the next stage in a process that we started, I think, 2 years ago, to have a compliance report every meeting. And so I think all of us are probably getting more comfortable with, okay, here are the issues, here are the projects involved. And so the logical next step is, I think, exactly what Councillor Devlin is asking about.
Yeah, and as I said, now that we have the actual resource, the staffing resources to do that, now we have 3 people, it makes it much easier to do those kinds of projects. Like with one person, scrambling just to try to keep up with everything, the huge volume of work that had to be done on an annual basis it's still overwhelming even with 3 people, but we can start to do these things. And as I always say, we do 3 things, within the siting division. We do the review of applications and amendments, we do rulemaking, and we do compliance. And you see the first 2 almost every meeting, you don't see compliance as much, but it is just as important as the other two. And so we want to kind of amplify that program and provide the information that you want in the way you want it. So please be thinking about that.
And the other thing I'll say is I also think that as we get these compliance reports, at least it makes me think about, well, what could we do at the beginning of the process as we see the project start to make sure we have that in place? So
No, and that's tying the compliance team with, reviews of the applications and amendments to ensure that those conditions that are being created are as clear and implementable as possible. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between, these sort of sub-programs within the division.
that's great. Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Any other questions? Again, I can't see on the screen, so feel free to just speak up. Okay.
No
Thank you,
questions.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And now we'll move on in the agenda and we'll have Summit Ridge Renewable Energy Facility Notice of Intent Extension Request. Sarah Esterson, Senior Policy Advisor, and we will review the request beginning with the presentation from Ms. Esterson.
Good afternoon, Chair Condon, Vice Chair Byer, and members of the council. If we could go to the next slide, please, Nancy. So let's start with a little background. Summit Ridge Wind LLC, the certificate holder, has requested to extend the expiration date of their notice of intent for the Summit Ridge Renewable Energy Facility from January 25th, 2026 to January 25th, 2027. The Summit Ridge Renewable Energy Facility is a 261 megawatt wind and solar facility proposed in Wasco County, for your reference. So you have rules that apply to a notice of intent extension request, and those rules establish your scope of review. That scope includes review of two criteria. One is a timely criteria and the other is good cause. The timely criteria establishes that a request for extension of a notice of intent expiration date must be submitted at least 45 days prior to the expiration date. And as I mentioned, they also have to provide or describe a good cause for the extension request. Okay, so let's review the criteria. The first criteria of timely. So the NOI expiration date was January 25th, 2026. The request to extend the expiration date was received on November 24th, 2025, which was 62 days prior to that deadline. So we are recommending that the timely submission criteria is met. And then for good cause, and I said certificate holder earlier, I meant applicant. The applicant provided two reasons to justify the extension request, which are somewhat interrelated, but they've requested more time to allow landowner negotiations, primarily due to uncertainty and changes in Bonneville Power Administration's planning for a substation that the applicant had been planning to interconnect to. So they said they need more time to negotiate siting given changes. And then the additional reason was that BPA has sort of changed their mind on the funding of the substation, but they still want an agreement in place so that they can tie in. Applicant has indicated that they would come to an agreement, execute an agreement in late January or February. And we did ask for some sort of additional description and details so that we could evaluate the merits of this representation of landowner negotiation, and we feel like they provided that upon request. So now I think next slide, please, Nancy. We are recommending that council find that criteria have been met and that the NOI expiration date may be extended by 1 year. And we'll now turn it over to you for deliberation and possible decision.
Council members, any comment? Questions?
This is Marcy. I have none.
Councilor Howard?
I have none.
I have one. Can you go back to the previous slide? It's just, do you have a feel for the order of the sufficient time? Does the planning with BPA and the negotiation with landowners occur at the same time, or do landowners want to understand that there is a BPA, an agreement with BPA first, or vice versa? BPA wants to understand that, no, you have the agreements with landowners and you're ready for the interconnect. Do you have an?
I don't think I know the answer to that. But in their discussion, they described that there's been like years of waiting for BPA to move forward on a decision on this substation. And then there was significant staff turnover earlier in the year. And then there were changes with the substation that necessitated new negotiation with landowner in terms of siting. So I can't speak to what the landowners knew to be true before the uncertainty came about.
An additional question, how many extensions are allowed for the notice of intent?
One.
Is it just one? Okay. Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments,
Chair Condon, I move that the council find the petition by the applicant to extend the expiration date of the notice of intent for the proposed Summit Ridge Renewable Energy Facility was timely submitted and demonstrates good cause for the extension for the reasons described in the staff report. I further move that the council approve the extension of the expiration date of the notice of intent for the proposed Summit Ridge Renewable Energy Facility by 1 year for a new expiration date of January 25, 2027.
we have a second.
Patty Perry here. I will second that.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any more discussion? With that, Secretary Cornett, can you call for the vote?
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Marcy Grail,
Yes.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Patty Perry.
Yes.
Motion carries, Chair Condon.
Thank you. And now to the next item, we have a public comment period. Sorry, we're a little bit late in that according to the timeline. This time is reserved for the public to address the council regarding any item within council jurisdiction that is not otherwise closed for comment. In the agenda, we have set the amount of time for individual commenters to 7 minutes. Nancy, how many comment cards and raised hands on the webinar and phone do we have?
At this point, we have one commenter in the room and there are no hands raised yet. So we can go ahead and call Jennifer Miller to go ahead and come on up and make your comments.
And if you could start with name and address and spell your name, that'd be great.
My name is Jennifer Miller, boring, Jennifer Miller. And I live in Hermiston, Oregon. And my comments are just really general. I have a letter that I'm reading from, and I will hand that over when I am finished. So it can be submitted
Thank
to
you.
the records or however you do
Thank
that.
you.
So my name is Jennifer Miller, and I'm here representing both myself and OCTA, Oregon and California Trails Association. My comments at this moment, excuse me, are general ones. I would like to ask the council to look at projects from, say, a helicopter view. This area of Eastern Oregon is being covered rapidly by wind, solar, and transmission activities. Valuable farmland, and native flora and fauna is being crowded out almost daily. Exclusive farming / wheat fields are being bought or signed over for projects with little regard to how our food will be reproduced in the future. Wheat fields, grazing, and rural means of making a living are being drastically affected. It seems as if the locals have to operate under one set of rules while energy projects get others, and there is not much consistency. In this particular area, and I mean this Grass Valley area, of course, There are historic trails that need to be considered. The Barlow Road cutoff runs through this area. And I do know that this council was addressed last night by Wendell Baskins. So we're part of the same group and I'm just continuing some of those comments.
Very
Yes.
quickly,
Sure.
I think only Chair Condon was online last night.
Oh.
The other council members didn't hear Mr. Baskin. So, and if that makes you want to change your public comment today, you can, but just to make sure you know that the rest of them didn't hear that.
That's fine. I was just saying, yeah. I'm just saying that some of the projects that are happening in this area are not, I think some of them are not knowledgeable that there is the Barlow Road cutoff and that projects do need to know about that going into, just from the very beginning, knowing that this historic trail cutoff does exist. And it would be really helpful if that cutout route could be added to layers on the FSAC project maps. So like when we go in and look at things, we can see where the main historic Oregon Trail is. But we also feel that the Barlow Road cutoff needs to be added as well, because it is also a very historic trail within the site, within the boundary of Oregon, plus the other 15, 16 major historic trails. So I'm asking if that map could be added. And I know OSU has something to do with the mapping, so some kind of coordination perhaps could be done to make sure that that cutoff map can be included. I do have 2 maps that were also here last night, but I will submit mine as well so that people today can look at them. And hope that this blue line that's on these maps could be added. So in conclusion, my request is just that a bigger picture is viewed instead of the projects or looking at piecemeal. The overall impact to this whole area is huge. It's just not a series of parcels, but a unique and amazing landscape that has its own beauty and importance. Any questions?
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Miller. Any questions? I don't hear anybody, but I do have one.
Okay.
So I'm curious, and I did certainly hear the comments I am curious if the association that you're a part of, if you have or scheduled meetings with landowners who are all part of this process.
We often don't know which landowners are impacted until we can look at the project on the map. So sometimes we don't even know about it until it's almost too late that it's even happening. As people are learning more about OCTA, the Oregon and California Trails Association, some projects are reaching out to us so that we can start working on things ahead of time and trying to create that space where preservation can be worked into the project if at all possible. And so, does that answer your question? So yes and no, like we don't always know who owns what. And of course, most projects have non-disclosure agreements signed. And so it's hard to know who knows what and who's willing to talk about what. And we understand that projects are going to happen. We understand that we need energy. We're just trying to do what we can do to save as much as we can while it is possible.
Thank you. Yeah,
Does that make
I
sense?
appreciate that. It's just, it kind of was opaque to me about what happens beforehand, what communication could be done.
Yeah, it
before-
would be great if we could get in on projects way sooner so that we could look up and then say, oh, that's not any threat of the trail. That's fine. Like that's not a problem. Or this is going to be a huge visual impact. Let's see what we can do about that. Or please don't put that transmission line directly along the length of this section of the trail. Perhaps cross it instead and parallel it, but a further distance away so that it's not such a big impact. So I mean, there's lots of things that we try to do to keep the story alive.
Okay. Secretary Cornett?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Condon. For the record, Todd Cornett. Are you signed up to receive our monthly sighting report?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because frankly, we usually don't even know the details of a project until they submit their notice of intent. So, whatever has occurred before then, we're not even in the loop on. So when we get that notice of intent and then we start to put it in the monthly sighting report or we provide the notice, that's really the first time that we have any indication. But it is important to know that that's the pre-application stage. So identifying anything, any resources, obviously your interest is in, primarily with the trails, but that's the time to do it, is during those notice of intent
Right.
comment periods.
Right. And I'm sure that, I mean, it's not just the trails. I mean, like there was a huge native presence in this area for hundreds of years. And so that is also an important thing. Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being here. Nancy, sorry.
All right. So at this point, there is one person with their hand raised, but let me just go ahead and remind everyone how to raise their hand. And you see it on the screen in front of you. If you are on the webinar, you're going to click on the participant window at the bottom of the screen. You're going to push the hand icon, and that will raise your hand. When you're finished commenting, you're going to click it again to lower it. If you are on the phone, push *3 on your keypad to raise your hand, and *3 again to lower your hand. So at this moment, I will unmute. I have Miss Irene Gilbert. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic, and you are ready to leave your comment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to comment on a couple of things. One is, as I've followed the council over several years, I've noted that the opportunity for the public to actually access the council members has become less and less easy and available. And one thing, I sent a couple of notices, a couple of information items specifically to the council regarding the wildlife mitigation plan because of exceedances. Basically, I said that I felt that with an error rate, doing mitigation that was projected to only bring the bat deaths down to 1/100th of a percentage below the threshold of concern should be of concern to the council. And also that there's nothing that I can see in terms of a follow-up evaluation or surveys to determine whether or not they actually stayed below the 2.5 standard. So I am concerned about that kind of thing. I also wanted to comment on the decision regarding an amendment to whether or not an amendment was needed due to the sale of the B2H interest in the transmission line to a private enterprise. Issues include, this is a non-energy organization, which has never done this before. They were created just to have this sale. They are not going to fall under the authority of the PUC because they're not an energy company. And so there's going to be no control over how much they're charging for energy or any of those kinds of things that are controlled that way. The fact that there is no longer going to be the stated customers or owners that were in the original certificate for public convenience and necessity has resulted in at least 3 appeals of the PUC determination that they were not going to rescind that certificate of public convenience and necessity. I'm also concerned because Pacific Core is basically wanting to sell this because their financing rating has fallen so much. And I'm concerned about the ability to access any funds from this shell company if it is needed to restore the site. So lots and lots of concerns that should be of concern to the council. And the PUC has not approved this sale. They're going to have full contested cases because of the substantial impacts and the unusual nature of this sale. So to think that the Energy Facility Siting Council does not believe that you should have a full amendment process really is a real surprise to me. And frankly, I'll be really surprised if there isn't, some kind of legal response to it, just given the fact that it's no longer the same owner, it's no longer the same customers. There's a question about whether or not they should even be condemning property to build this. And part of that question is related to the fact that this new company has no experience and and nobody's going to control what they do to the customers. So I encourage you to have some more discussion about this and perhaps decide that a decision to not provide an amendment isn't the wisest choice, given, I mean, this is a big deal legally, a big deal publicly, and it's not going to go away. So that's my comment about B2H. Be careful what you do. And I wanted to say I'm sorry to see Katie gone. She was asking questions that needed to be asked, especially since the public has such a hard time getting to the council with information. I was really surprised to see the email that I sent to the council members returned saying we aren't taking comments on this. And I'm assuming you never saw my email, but to have that kind of a blockade between the public and FSAC, it seems to defeat your entire reason for existing. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Any questions from the council or comments? Thank you very much. Nancy, any more hands raised?
There are no more hands raised at this time. We'll do a last call. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
I think that'll do it for us. So we will move on. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert, for your comments. And we'll move on to our next item, which is the State Line Wind Project Wildlife Monitoring and Mitigation Plan Amendment. And this is an action item for the council. Christopher Clark, Senior Siting Analysis, will be guiding us through the review. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Condon, council members. For the record, my name is Christopher Clark. I'm a senior siting analyst with the department, and I've been assigned to monitor compliance for the State Line Wind Project. So, Nancy, if I could get the next slide, please. So the State Line Wind Project is an operational wind power facility located in Umatilla County, Oregon, and Walla Walla County, Washington. The council has jurisdiction over the components cited in Oregon. As shown on the slide, the facility consists of 3 phases that are separated into 2 distinct geographic and operational units. Those are State Line 1 and 2, which are the black dots, and the Van Sickle 2 portion of the facility, which are the red dots. I'm going to be talking mostly about Van Sickle 2 today, as that's what this mitigation proposal is for. I also just wanted to point out that there's different certificate holders for each of the geographic units, but both certificate holder LLCs are subsidiaries of NextEra Energy Resources LLC. So moving specifically into the discussion of Van Sickle 2, that portion of the facility includes 43 Siemens 2.3 megawatt turbines. The council approved the final order on request for 7 in 2022, and that authorized that the turbines which had been commissioned in 2009 can be repowered with larger diameter rotors. If I could get the next slide, please. So that repowering was completed in 2023, and then a post-repowering fatality monitoring study that was required by the Wildlife Monitoring and Mitigation Plan that was included as part of that final order on request for Amendment 7, required 1 year of post-repowering fatality monitoring, which was completed between 2023 and 2024. After the monitoring was complete in April of last year, the certificate holder notified us that there was an exceedance of the threshold of concern for bat fatalities. And based on the estimation methods required by the WMP, The report estimated that there were approximately 5.86 bat fatalities per megawatt attributable to the facility in the monitor year, compared with the threshold of 2.5 fatalities per megawatt. No other thresholds of concern were exceeded. And I did want to note that all reported bat fatalities were from 2 migratory bat species. That's the hoary bat and silver-haired bat. After an opportunity for public comment on the monitoring results and consultation with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, or ODFW, the department notified the certificate holder that based on the magnitude of the exceedance and the species affected, that mitigation was necessary. We received the mitigation proposal that is included as attachment 1 to your staff report in October. I'll go into the details in that in the next slide, but I did want to remind the council that the approved wildlife monitoring and mitigation plan authorizes the department to agree to mitigation actions and changes to the WMP, but it requires us to notify the council of any agreements, and the council retains the authority to approve, reject, or modify the actions or agreements. Okay, so any questions so far? Sorry, I'm going a little fast. Okay. So in the mitigation proposal itself, the certificate holder proposes to curtail operations of all Van Sickle 2 turbines for the life of the facility. Curtailment would occur when wind speeds are below the manufacturer's recommended cut-in speed of 3 meters per second year-round, and then the cut-in speed would increase to 5 meters per second in July and October, and 6 meters per second in August and September. Curtailment essentially means feathering or breaking turbine blades so that the rotation of the blades slows. I can go into exactly the definition of curtailment that we've worked out or received from the certificate holder in a couple slides, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then I wanted to kind of illustrate what this graph is showing is that we have studies showing that curtailment is an effective strategy to reduce bat mortality associated with wind facility operations, and that mortality rates are, or reductions in mortality rates are positively associated with increased curtailment wind speeds. So the more you curtail, the less likely it is that there will be fatalities. I don't want to present myself as an expert on all the science on this, but the general idea is that bats are more active at lower wind speeds since very windy conditions make it harder for them to fly and hunt. So stopping or slowing blades to less than dangerous speeds at these low wind speeds is a really good strategy to reduce mortality without impacting the power production of the wind farm as much as other things might. And then I wanted to point out that the yellow line on this graph is showing the proposed cut-in speed for wind. So if winds are below 3 meters per second year-round, it shows the flat part of the line. That's when the wind turbines would not rotate as quickly. That wind speed increases during the months when the most fatalities were reported. Those months also coincide with the migration periods for the 2 bat species that are affected. So this proposal was based on the threshold of concern and based on the statistical analysis provided in a meta-analysis of a number of different curtailment studies. There's a link to that meta-analysis in your staff report. The proposal would be expected to reduce fatalities to 2.49 fatalities per megawatt per year, which is just below the threshold. We did consult with our colleagues at ODFW on the review of the proposal and whether it would be effective in addressing the concern, and they provided support for curtailment as a strategy to minimize and mitigate bat mortality risks. And they noted that if this proposal is accepted, it would be the first time that curtailment was implemented at an Oregon facility. As I did want to note, one thing is that there are no follow-up requirements for monitoring of the effectiveness of this proposal, but ODFW, outside of the regulatory process, is working to connect an independent researcher with the facility to conduct a study of fatalities after curtailment is implemented. So based on the comments we received from ODFW and review of the evidence provided, the department notified the certificate holder that we agreed with the proposal in December. And if I could get the next slide. We are still in the process of working with the certificate holder to document the specifics and details of the agreement as an amendment to the WMP. Specific items that we've discussed or have resolved so far is the standard for curtailment, which is that they would reduce the speeds of turbine blade rotation to less than 1 rotation per minute when the 10-minute average of wind speed is below the applicable cut-in speed. We are still working to solidify the reporting and validation requirements, although they've informed us that their SCADA system can give a report of whether or not the curtailment was implemented to the minute, and that they're working on a way to include that into the annual compliance report that would be submitted to us each April. They're also looking at a way to notify us if there was a significant failure of the system and curtailment didn't happen when it was supposed to for a prolonged amount of time. The certificate holder also notified us that they intended for this mitigation proposal to only be implemented from dusk to dawn because it is a proposal related to that mitigation. We let them know that we thought that was a material change since it wasn't specified in the original thing, although we don't necessarily object to it. We wanted to talk to our colleagues at ODFW again and make sure there weren't any additional concerns. They're also working on getting the specifics of what dusk to dawn means and how that will be determined. So all that to say on this slide is that we don't have a red line for you at this time. We thought it would still be valuable to get additional feedback. If the council's comfortable with moving forward with this information, I think it would still make sense to make a vote. I'll leave that up to you. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Council members, any questions or comments about the presentation? Councillor Howe.
Yeah, this is Kent. Great staff report, good explanation. When I was going through it, it's kind of what's the word for when it's not straightforward in the way you're thinking, in the way I'm thinking anyway. And so it was like when I was reading in November to June, when the blade rotation would be limited when the wind speed is below 3 meters per second. I looked that up, that's about 7 miles an hour. Then the manufacturer is gonna cut the speed of the blade, I think is what that means.
Thank you, Councilmember Howe. So when the manufacturer's cut-in speed is the speed at which the wind has to be blowing for the turbine to begin producing electricity.
Okay.
So if the wind is not that fast, they will feather it out of the wind so that the blades don't spin as fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So on that graph where when the winds are higher in those months, it seemed like it was the way it was showing was
Nancy, can you go back to that slide? Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
it looks like it allows them to go faster because the line goes up as opposed to dipping down. And that just confused me. And it's not you, it's just my brain was looking at it and thinking, okay, I think what I wanted to do is have it show a reduction in the speed of the blade, but that's showing how much it's going to reduce the speed of the blade.
Council member Howe, I'd say what the line on the graph represents is how fast the wind has to be blowing before the turbine starts spinning. It's not related to the speed of the turbine itself. It's related to the speed of the wind. And once the wind starts blowing, if it starts for most of the year outside of the migration period, if the wind's at 2.9 meters per second, based on their meteorological towers, the turbines will be stopped from spinning as quickly.
Okay.
Once it hits 3 meters per second or more, they will feather the blades back into the wind and it'll start spinning normally.
Okay.
And I do not know how fast those turbine blades go, but it is fast when they are into the wind. So, yeah.
Chair Condon.
Secretary Cornett.
So just for clarification, because so to me, this graph represents the fatalities. Is that right?
It's a 2-axis graph. So the axis on the left, the y-axis on the left is the number of fatalities, and that'd be the bar graph.
Mhm.
And then the line graph is the cut-in speed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and so obviously August, September, October, that's where the majority or much higher levels of bad fatalities are occurring.
Right.
And so trying to adjust the cut-in speed during those months to a different level to reduce those fatalities. Is that the basic concept?
That's correct. Yeah. And in the meta-analysis, it kind of indicates that for each additional meter per second of wind speed that you allow curtailment to continue, basically, you get a greater number of you get fewer and fewer reductions. So bats are still active above 3.0 meters per second. So if you increase it to 5 or 6, more bats or less bats will be negatively impacted by the turbines.
So the yellow line is the proposed cut-in speed. And so theoretically, a year from now, if you showed this graph, the yellow line would be the same because that's their established cut-in speed.
Yeah.
But if it works as it's supposed to work, those numbers probably in July, August, September, October,
Yeah.
those should be reduced below that because those cut-in speeds changed according to that yellow line.
Right. Yeah. I knew that's what it all was saying, but intuitively, it seemed like to reduce the wind speed, the graph shouldn't go
Right.
up. It ought to be reducing the wind speed, the
Right.
speed of the blade, but I get it. And I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks. It's my bad. I'll take full credit for this graph.
Oh, no.
It made sense in my brain, but I understand why it's not intuitive. So.
But just, can you go back to the graph? I just want to make sure. So from November, well, as it says, from November to June, the turbines are basically still, right?
Councilmember Condon, between November and June, curtailment would only occur when wind speeds are below 3 meters per second. So that's actually the most they would be operating. They would be operating most of the time between November and June.
So bats don't
That's-
fly in higher wind speeds.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where that ceiling is for them, but they are more active at low wind speeds. That's correct.
Yes, okay,
That helps too. I didn't understand that.
okay. I think I was kind of thinking about this backwards.
Yeah, I was too.
So, and I have a question related to curtailment and has curtailment been used I'm presuming that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife has lots of information about this issue. Is curtailment used in other states effectively, and therefore this should be meaningful? Curtailment here should be meaningful to decrease fatalities.
Chair Condon, yes. I don't know how often it has been used as a regulatory instrument, but the meta-analysis provided is actually based on real studies that happened across the United States, including studies, I think in the Northwest, but definitely studies that included the 2 species that are present here, were present in those studies. And they look at both a pre-curtailment study and a post-curtailment study to a certain extent, and then see how the reductions played out. So I think there are, I couldn't tell you the exact number of studies, but it being a meta-analysis, it does include several that were conducted over a decade. So empirically supported to be an effective strategy. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the final question for me on it is, given the higher than anticipated fatalities before, is there any mitigation, post mitigation, we've seen contributions to wildlife centers or whatever to speak to the over fatalities.
When we had our initial consultation with ODFW, we kind of asked about that. There's two reasons why that sort of compensatory mitigation was not preferred, and this sort of operational curtailment that's actually designed to reduce future fatalities was the option that we pushed for and what was proposed. So there's not a lot of data available about migratory bats. There's not a lot of science on them, so not a lot of studies. And biologists don't even know a ton about their migration patterns. So we see them when they show up in a fatality study, but it's hard to kind of estimate what would really help them as far as that sort of compensatory mitigation. And the other thing is where raptors might be able to go to a rehabilitation study. Bats are both very small, and I think any interaction they have with a wind turbine that results in an injury or fatality is almost always a fatality. So there's not a lot of opportunities for rehabilitation of injured bats just because of the nature of how they are affected by wind turbines.
Yes, and to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that. I think that mitigation approach as it is here going forward is much better than a compensatory approach, but it was the compensation for the higher than expected that I was questioning, but just a question.
Thank you, Chair Condon. One comment on the thresholds of concern is they are a signpost. So it's, we have requirements for post-construction fatality monitoring often. And then if the thresholds is exceeded, it's not necessarily like they need to meet the threshold. Like that triggers a conversation with us, and then we see if this is an impact that wasn't considered in the permitting that needs to be addressed. And that's what we found was the case in this case. A lot of times there will just be another year monitoring and it'll be found to be an anomaly. So it is a little more nuanced than we just need them to get down to 2.5.
Hey, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing or hearing none.
Chair Condon, I move that the council approve the proposed amendments to the State Line Wind Project Wildlife Monitoring and Mitigation Plan to curtail turbine operations at the Van Sickle 2 unit below specified wind speeds to address an exceedance of the threshold of concern for bat fatalities as presented in the staff report.
Thank you, Councillor Howe.
Second.
We have a second from Councillor Devlin. Secretary.
Yes, there's Patty Perry seconds the motion.
Oh, we had a second from Councillor Devlin.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. And Secretary Cornett, can you please call?
Patty Perry,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Marcy Grell.
Yes.
Motion carries, Chair Condon.
Thank you, Secretary Cornett and councilors.
Chair
And
Condon,
thank you. Yes.
this is Marcy. And Christopher, I just got to tell you, thank you for what you're doing. But I tell you, everybody, every year, this is the hardest thing for me to do on FSEC. The whole bat thing just wigs me out. So good on you for getting in there and pulling it together for us, Christopher. Because if I had to read very much, I don't think I'd be pulling my weight. So thanks as always for a great presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Is it the picture that wigs you out?
When I see you again, I will amuse you with all my nuanced fears and paranoia and all the things bat related. Bats and rats, all the things, just, I can't even tell you. I can't look at them on TV without getting the heebie-jeebies. Yes, technical term, heebie-jeebies. I turn into a 5-year-old child. I'm sitting here with my eyes kind of open, like squinting, trying to not be a child about it. But oh, that's a rough one.
Well, thanks for sticking with us. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Oregon Trail Solar Facility revegetation and noxious weed plan amendments. It's an action item, and Sarah Anderson is with us once again, policy advisor, and for a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Condon, Vice Chair Byer, and members of the council. So the site certificate for the Oregon Trail Solar Facility authorizes up to 41, you can go back just one second. It authorizes up to 41 megawatts of a combination of wind and solar power generation components within an approved site located in Gillum County. The certificate holder is Oregon Trail Solar LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Avangrid Power LLC. So for this facility, the pre-construction and construction is being phased, and it's currently in both phases with plans to move forward with construction 41 megawatt solar facility and 20 megawatt battery energy storage system on Monday. So as you know, as we talk about compliance, that pre-construction compliance is a phase where the certificate holder is required to comply with pre-construction conditions that are established in the site certificate that you've issued prior to moving forward with construction. And this is a process where the certificate holder is submitting information to the department for review and approval or occurrence. Mitigation plans are almost always pre-construction requirements that have to be finalized and approved prior to construction. So in this instance, for this facility, we're here to discuss changes related to 2 mitigation plans, the revegetation and noxious weed plans. So as part of pre-construction compliance for this facility, for these 2 plans, the certificate holder requested changes that are beyond the scope of changes contemplated in the draft plan. So while we've reviewed for approval for finalization, they've requested substantive changes that we want to bring back to the council for transparency to make sure that you would agree with these types of changes. And as we've discussed in a couple of meetings over the last year, if not a lot, that mitigation plans do have an amendment clause that allows for changes to be reviewed outside of the amendment process, but maintains an obligation that we bring it forward to council for concurrence, modification, or rejection. Okay, so let's move into the substantive changes that the certificate has proposed. So first, the revegetation plan. The revegetation plan applies to temporary impacts to habitat predominantly, and then it has general requirements for restoration of temporary impacts to cropland. So the proposal is to remove all requirements that apply to temporarily impacted habitat, because based on this solar facility, there really isn't temporary impacts outside the fence line that are considered habitat. What they have is a little sliver of a collector line it has grassland dispersed throughout other ag land in between the Patch-Waywit facility and active ag. So if you look at it on its own, it's grassland that's considered habitat. But when you look at it overall and you consider habitat function and value based on consultation with ODFW, we agree to categorize it as category 6, which relieves the obligation to do a habitat restoration level plan that is within the revegetation plan. So just to note, general revegetation requirements still apply. You have a mandatory condition that applies to all temporary impacts, and it says you have to restore temporarily impacted land commensurate with adjacent lands. And then they have an obligation under the 1200C permit that DEQ issues. All FSEC facilities have to get this permit. That also has a vegetation stabilization requirement before they can close that permit out. So while the proposal is to basically remove this habitat restoration level requirement because there's no real habitat, know that revegetation is still a requirement. Okay, so, and then we are going to lift the general restoration of cropland, temporarily impacted cropland over into the noxious weed plan. So now we can go over into the noxious weed plan. That noxious weed plan also has a seeding and weed treatment obligation. So you're going to get revegetation through the noxious weed plan as well. But the substantive change here that was beyond finalization requires amendment is that they, again, want to use sheep grazing as a vegetation management strategy at this site. You have evaluated this request for several solar to date, including the Montag Solar, also known as Patchway-Witt, as well as Bakeoven and Daybreak. And as you know, with ODFW coming forward, you received a presentation a few months ago. Their biggest concern with sheep grazing is the potential for disease transmission to big game or to bighorn sheep. And so we did consult with regional biologist Lindsay Summers at ODFW to confirm whether that disease transmission risk concern existed for this site. And they confirmed that it did not, but they do have a set of best management practices they've recommended be included in the plan. So that is included in red line and the attachment 2 for your consideration, but it includes doing fence checks to make sure that the fence is intact and that sheep can't escape, and that they would be monitoring and reporting to evaluate if there are bighorn sheep identified or if any of sheep escape from the site should they choose to use it. And then we've recommended that the noxious weed plan make clear that use of sheep grazing and the success thereof is reported annually to the department, as we do want to understand if this is working or what type of problems are occurring and that they are following through with those ODFW notification elements. And yeah, I summarized that on the slide too. Okay, so those are the substantive changes proposed that would necessitate an amendment of both the revegetation plan and the noxious weed plan. And we are recommending that council concur with staff and agree that these changes can be incorporated. So I'll hand it over to you for deliberation and decision.
Council members, any comments or questions?
No questions. This is Marcy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Esterson, for the presentation. And I think we might be ready for motion.
Chair Condon, I move that the council approve the proposed amendments to the Oregon Trail Solar Project revegetation plan and the noxious weed plan as presented in the staff report.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Do we have a second?
This is Councilmember
Is there-
Grail. I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grail. Any discussion? Secretary Cornett, I think we're ready for a vote.
Richard Devlin,
Aye.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Marcy Grail,
Yes.
Patty Perry,
Yes,
Cindy Condon.
Yes.
Motion carries, Chair Condon.
Again, thank you, Ms. Esterson, for the presentation. And now we have on the schedule a break. So we'll take a break at this point, and our next agenda item is at 6 o'clock. And so this will be a longer break than our normal break. Sorry about that. We don't have a circus animals or anything. So with us, we do have some refreshments and some people to talk to. So thank you very much. We'll break until 6 o'clock. Good evening. My name is Cindy Condon. It is now 5:59, almost 6 o'clock, and I would like to call the meeting back from recess and continue on with our next agenda item, which is Bigelow Canyon Amendment 4, the public hearing. And with us tonight is Chris Clark, Senior Siting Analyst, will provide an overview of the siting process and the proposed amendment as the hearing progresses, and the hearing will progress. So, thank you, Chris. You have
Thank you, Chair Condon, council members. For the record, my name is Chris Clark. I'm a senior siting analyst with the department, and we are here tonight for the public hearing on the proposed order for request for Amendment 4 of the site certificate of the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm. I am going to start the presentation tonight with an overview of the proposed amendment and the proposed order. I'll then turn it over to our senior siting analyst, Sarah Esserson, who will be serving as the presiding officer for tonight's hearing. Sarah will give an overview of the hearing process itself and then open the floor to public hearing and oral testimony. The order of testimony will be the certificate will be given an opportunity to speak, followed by members of the public, and then the council will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions. To get into the overview of the proposed order, this project, the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm, is an operating wind power generation facility in Sherman County. The facility includes 217 Vestas and Siemens turbines and related and supporting facilities, including a collector substation and an O&M facility. The facility is located within an approximately 39 square mile site, located about 2 miles from the city of Wasco at its closest point. In request for Amendment 4, the certificate holder proposes to construct and operate a 125 megawatt solar photovoltaic power generation facility, 500 megawatt hour battery energy storage system, or BESS, and new related or supporting facilities at the existing site. The proposed facility components would be located within a proposed solar micrositing area, which is represented by the pink hash outline on this map. The proposed solar micrositing area includes approximately 1,924 acres, which is that is located entirely within the approved site boundary. That proposed micrositing area is located approximately 4.8 miles northeast of the city of Wasco. This request for amendment is being processed under the amendment rules that were adopted by the council last October. The department received the preliminary application or preliminary request for amendment, excuse me, on April 21st, 2025. We conducted a completeness review in coordination with reviewing agencies, and after receiving responses to requests for additional information between July and September of last year, and then in a revised amendment request in November, we issued a determination that the request was complete on December 5th, 2025. On December 16th, we issued the proposed order as well as a public notice establishing the comment period on the proposed order and tonight's hearing. After the close of the public comment period, the certificate holder will be required to respond in writing to comments, and the department will have the option to respond as well. And then there will be an opportunity for commenters to reply to those responses and certificate holder to provide replies to those replies. Sarah Esserson will go over this process in more detail during her presentation. No later than 21 days after the deadline for replies, the department must issue a draft of the final order with written analysis of any comments on the proposed order, including analysis of responses and replies and replies, and whether we recommend any changes to the proposed order. And then if we recommend any changes, we will include them in a draft final order, which we'll present to the council. The council can review and then modify, reject, or approve as their final order. If the council grants issuance of an amended site certificate, the council will then issue an amended site certificate effective upon execution by the council chair and by the site certificate holder. So this request would add new energy facilities to the existing site in the existing site certificate. And for that reason, there were a lot of existing conditions in the approved site certificate, which were applicable to pre-construction and construction phases of the existing facility, which, while no longer applicable to the existing facility, could be updated and amended to apply to the proposed facility components. Some of those conditions, particularly mandatory conditions, would also apply to both the operation of existing and proposed components. To make applicability of the existing and proposed conditions more clear, departments recommended that the site certificate be reorganized and that all conditions be renumbered with an identifier that includes phase and standards, similar to more recent site certificates. But many of those conditions aren't changing. And some of the conditions that are new or proposed to be amended are very similar to conditions that have been imposed or adopted by the council in recent proceedings. So I'm not going to go into the standards, which only have those kinds of conditions in them in a lot of detail during this presentation. They are shown on this slide, these standards that I won't cover more here, but I did want to give the opportunity to the council to ask questions now if you want, just so you know that there are findings and conditions associated with all these. I just don't have more in my presentation about them at this time. Yeah, is that better? Excellent. That is much better. Okay. Well, hearing questions, I'm going to go over some select issues and conditions in the proposed order. I do know we have a lot of interest tonight, so I will try to keep it brief. For the general standard of review, the department is recommending that the council find that this facility or the request for amendment would comply with the applicable standards and that the council approve this as part of the general standard review. As far as conditions, we do have two fairly standard conditions for construction deadlines that I did just want to highlight. These are similar to what the council has done recently, but given some legislative changes recently, I thought it would be worth just pointing out that our recommended general standards 1 and 2 would recommend that the council impose construction deadlines that for the beginning of construction, construction would be required to start within 6 years after the date the amended site certificate is issued. And then construction would be required to be completed within 3 years after the date that construction actually begins. This is, again, consistent with the mandatory condition language that requires the council to set deadlines and with the requirements of HB 3681, which requires the council to give at least 6 years to the start of construction. But I did want to point out that in the request for amendment, the certificate holders indicated that they intend to begin construction in the second quarter of this year. And that construction would take 17 to 19 months. Okay. Moving to organizational expertise, we wanted to highlight that this project is somewhat unique in that the certificate holder, which is Portland General Electric Company, would construct and operate the solar components in partnership with another entity, Big L BN LLC, Big L, which is a subsidiary of Bright Night LLC, under a build transfer agreement. So given this partnership, we are both looking at the expertise of Portland General Electric and Bright Night. Bright Night, as it says on the slide, is based in Florida and has designed and constructed over 6 gigawatts of solar and storage projects in the United States. And that in the request for amendment, Bright Night and PGE have committed to having stringent contracting standards to ensure the selected contractors and vendors can adequately support the construction and operation of facility components proposed in the request for amendment. To ensure that this happens, the department has recommended the council adopt and amend several conditions. Recommended amended condition 1 would require the certificate holder to provide notice of the identity and qualifications of all primary contractors and vendors involved in the construction of the solar facility, which is a fairly standard condition and similar to what is in current condition 1. The change is that the condition would also require PGE to identify the individuals at Big L that will manage and oversee the selected vendors and contractors. So there's an additional layer of oversight included. Similarly, recommended amended condition 2, which currently only applies to construction, would require the certificate holder and Big L to contractually require all contractors and subcontractors for the construction and operation, it should say on the slide, of the solar facility to comply with all applicable laws and regulations and the terms and conditions of the site certificate. Next, we just wanted to highlight, and I think this is one of the things you will hear about during the hearing tonight, is that the existing wind facility has experienced substantial equipment and maintenance issues over the past few years, and that we have been documenting incidents since 2022, including a blade detachment, oil and grease releases, multiple transformer failures, multiple turbine door and hatch malfunctions. Those are things that have been reported to the council in your regular compliance reports. There are also things that are being addressed through corrective action plans and other compliance actions at the site. But we have, given those issues and the lessons learned identified by the certificate holder in the request, recommended a few additional conditions, new conditions be imposed to enhance the oversight of operations and maintenance activities at the site. Recommended organizational expertise condition 1s and 2 would require finalization and implementation of a draft framework operations and maintenance plan prior to and during operations. That plan outlines the operational responsibilities, long-term maintenance protocols, quality assurance processes, environmental compliance measures, and emergency response and monitoring systems that would be relied upon to safely operate and maintain the solar components. A version of that draft framework plan that includes information the department believes will be required to be included prior to operation is included as an attachment to the proposed order. The additional information requirements included by the department include things like budgeting, community outreach, and reporting protocols. Recommended organizational expertise condition 3 would incorporate construction progress reporting requirements, which are established in OAR Chapter 345, Division 26. But where those reports are typically provided semi-annually, the recommended condition would increase the frequency of reporting to every 3 months to allow the department to track progress and compliance more closely. And then recommended, and the last bullet should read recommended amended condition 4 would impose enhanced incident reporting requirements similar to the requirements provided in OAR Chapter 345, Division 29. Moving to land use, we just wanted to highlight that there are numerous land use conditions intended to ensure compliance with the Sherman County zoning ordinance and other local land use criteria. But we wanted to focus on the goal exception and recommended land use condition 6, which would be implementing part of that exception request. So in the goal exception request, the certificate holder provides several reasons why the policy underlying statewide planning goal 3 should not apply. And the department recommends that the council grant a goal exception based on 2 of those reasons, which are locational dependence to both existing energy infrastructure, including transmission and transportation infrastructure, as well as a rural economic development reason. And the council or the department has recommended the council reject proposed minimal impacts to other resources in consistency with state climate goals and policy reasons. As part of the local rural economic development benefit reasons, the certificate holder has represented that it will finalize and implement a draft community investment plan and contribute $1,600 per acre of cultivated land that would be occupied by the solar components to a community investment plan that would be administered by the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District. Recommended land use condition 6 would require the certificate holder to implement those representations. For fish and wildlife habitat, the and my apologies for not having the exact number, but the facility would occupy mostly cultivated farmland, but there would be, I think, around 24 acres. My apologies again for that not being the exact number of category 2 sagebrush shrubland habitat and other habitat areas. To mitigate for those impacts, the recommended fish and wildlife habitat conditions 1 and 2 would require the certificate holder to finalize and implement a draft habitat mitigation plan and provide in-kind in proximity mitigation for habitat impacts. This is a pretty standard approach for mitigation to habitat impacts. And one thing we wanted to flag here is that the habitat mitigation area that was identified in consultation with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is a habitat mitigation area adjacent to the Carty Generation Facility in Morrow County. We understand that that site is preferred because it provides high quality grassland habitat of a similar kind to the habitat that would be impacted and is adjacent to other habitat mitigation areas, which would enhance the conservation of value of the habitat mitigation area. We also have a condition which is fairly similar to standard conditions requiring seasonal restrictions on construction work near active nest sites. And those were recommended in accordance with recommendations from ODFW. We have several public services conditions that are amended from conditions that would be in the existing site certificate, as well as new conditions for public services. I want to highlight in particular recommended amended conditions 74 and 76, and then recommended new public services conditions 1 and 2. Recommended amended conditions 74 and 76 would require the certificate holder to demonstrate that an adequate water supply for construction and operation has been secured, then that all water for construction will be legally obtained. That's similar to the conditions the council has adopted in other water constrained areas in the state. For recommended public services conditions 1 and 2, they would require the certificate holder to develop and implement a construction worker housing plan to provide strategies to minimize impacts to the local housing supply. That is in part due to the limited nature of RV parking here in Sherman County and the potential for adverse impacts if there's not a coordinated effort to make sure construction workers get to appropriate housing options. In addition to organizational expertise, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the things the council will hear a lot about tonight, and the thing the council has heard about in comments already submitted on the record, is wildfire prevention and risk mitigation. We just wanted to summarize some of the findings in the proposed order. So conditions in Sherman County are conducive to large and fast moving fires, grass fires, and the probability of a fire in the proposed solar micrositing area is high, particularly in the summer months, according to data from the community wildfire protection planning tool, as well as the Oregon Wildfire Explorer map data. Areas of elevated fire risk in the proposed solar micrositing area, which are shown by the darker red areas on the map on the slide, are concentrated around existing residential structures and infrastructure. We also want to point out that damage to agricultural lands and other areas is possible. You can see in this map too that there are some areas within canyons that are mapped as having, light benefits from fire. Those are really ecosystem benefits and don't reflect the hazard of fire spread. Design features and maintenance standards to reduce wildfire risk that are discussed both in the request for amendment as well as the draft construction wildfire mitigation plan that's attached to the proposed order and the proposed order itself, in orienting arrays adjacent and parallel to existing roads for access and fire breaks, setting perimeter fences back at least 50 feet from property lines and facility components 20 feet back from those fences, installing 20-foot service roads with 10-foot vegetation clearance zones on either side, maintaining 20-foot vegetation clearance areas around the outside of all perimeter fences, and maintaining 20-foot gravel or compacted soil buffers around the O&M building, collector substation, and a proposed battery energy storage system. And to show in a little bit more detail, inside those areas called vegetation clearance zones and areas within the solar array fence vegetation would be limited to a height of 10 to 12 inches during the rainy season, when fires are less likely, and then 1 to 3 inches during the dry season. A minimum vegetation clearance of 12 inches would also be maintained from electrical equipment at all times. As far as the conditions, wildfire prevention and risk mitigation conditions 1 and 2 would require the certificate holder to develop and implement a construction wildfire mitigation plan, whereas wildfire prevention and risk mitigations conditions 3 and 4 would apply to the operation of the facility. The certificate holder would be required to develop and implement a operational wildfire mitigation plan. But the condition as recommended would allow the certificate holder to rely on the Public Utility Commission reviewed wildfire protection plan or other plans included in the final order or approved by the department to satisfy the requirement. And I'm highlighting this. I do want to point out that there is a draft construction wildfire mitigation plan attached to the proposed order, but there's not an operational wildfire mitigation plan at this time, although some of the requirements and vegetation standards have been incorporated into other plans. In particular, vegetation management conditions would be incorporated into a draft comprehensive revegetation and soil management plan, which is required under recommended soil protection conditions 1 to 4. And then I wanted to just highlight that the setbacks from the property lines are being recommended under a land use condition, recommended land use condition 1. Okay, that concludes my review of the things that we thought would be most important for the council to be aware of and things that the public might be interested in before this. I do want to go quickly over a review of the comments that we've received to date, and then I'll turn things over to Sarah, but I'll just pause for a second in case there's any questions. Okay. So my slide is a little out of date. I put this together at about noon today, but since that time, we've received 1 additional comment. So as of today, the department has received 9 written comments. 6 of those comments are from Catherine McCullough. 1 of the comments was from the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District. The certificate holder provided comments, and then we also received comments from the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs Reservation of Oregon. I believe most of the folks who provided comments are here tonight, so I'm going to go over what's in there very, very briefly. I do not have a slide for the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District's comments, and I'll just summarize that they explain their relationship with the Community Investment Plan and their partnership in implementing it. So good comments to review. Issues raised in comments by Ms. McCullough include concerns about the certificate holder's ability to safely operate and maintain the proposed facility components. And those comments provide documentation of ongoing maintenance issue at the existing wind facility. The comments provide concerns about the certificate holder's ability to maintain vegetation and equipment on site in a manner that provides protection from wildfire. Concerns about potential liability for damages to the solar facility from a wildfire arising from farm practices. Concern over the lack of the operational wildfire mitigation plan. A comment that Exhibit P, which is the wildlife habitat exhibit and the biological assessment in the request, do not adequately address impacts to mammals and other species that could be present at the site, such as pronghorn and mule deer. Concern and concern about the adequacy of a single hearing. Again, I'm summarizing this very quickly. There's obviously more detail in those comments, and the commenter herself, I believe, will be touching on a lot of these topics tonight. But I just wanted to give an overview of what was in there. The certificate holder also provided fairly extensive comments requesting corrections to the facility description, minor corrections to certain findings and conditions in the site certificate. I'm sure you will hear in more detail from them about those tonight. They've requested additional flexibility in transmission corridor siting under the proposed recommended condition Gen TL05. Requests for changes on timing of compliance with water rights conditions pre-WR01 and operations WR01 relating to the timing of providing a well log for new wells and flow meter readings for existing wells, based on when it's possible to get that information, and request for release of the prohibition on vegetation removal during critical periods for ground nesting birds, if clearance surveys are conducted prior to removal. And then I don't have a slide for the comments from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, but I do think it's important just to raise those, that they requested specific review of a condition related to the scope of when cultural resource monitoring would be required. They've asked that it be required during all ground disturbing activities, not just in ground disturbing activities within a avoidance buffer. Yeah, and so that concludes my presentation. And unless there's questions for me, I will turn it over to the presiding officer to give an overview of the hearing process.
Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the public hearing on the proposed order on request for site certificate amendment 4 for Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm. I, Sarah Esterson, Senior Policy Advisor for the Oregon Department of Energy Siting Division, am serving as the presiding officer for this hearing. Today is January 15th, 2026. The time is 6:27. This public hearing is being held at an Energy Facility Siting Council meeting in person here at the Grass Valley Pavilion in Grass Valley, Oregon. This hearing is also being held via WebEx webinar with a call-in option for those who cannot participate in person or via webinar. Please note that this hearing is being recorded and the presentations, written comments, and all verbal testimony are part of the decision record for this amendment request. Okay, so hopefully you're aware the comment period on the department's proposed order on request for amendment 4 extends through January 30th at 5 p.m. It is important that you know the following information. A person who contends that the council should reject the request to amend this site certificate, or that council in its final order should reject or revise certain aspects of the department's proposed order, must meet the following. You must comment in person or in writing prior to the close of the comment period, again, that January 30th, 2026, 5 p.m. deadline. You must raise your issue with sufficient specificity to afford the council, the department, and the certificate holder an adequate opportunity to respond. To raise an issue with sufficient specificity, you must, in your comments, identify the recommended findings of fact, conclusion of law, or conditions of approval that are included in the proposed order to which you object. You need to specify the council standard or other applicable state or local requirement on which your objection is based, and present facts or statements that support your objection. If your comment is not made with sufficient specificity, the council will not be able to make changes in its final order based on your comments. Okay, so if you comment during this comment period, which started December 5th, again, extends through January 30th, you will automatically be part of a subsequent process, which is designed to further evaluate the issues that you raise. This is a new process for us, so it's going to be interesting. So the certificate holder, which is Portland General Electric, is required to respond to all comments. The department may respond, but the holder is required to respond to all comments. And the certificate holder and the department have a deadline of February 13th to respond to your comments. These responses are going to be provided to you in the same method that you commented. So if you email your comments and we have your email address, that's how you're going to receive responses. If you submit your comments in hard copy with a physical address, we don't have an email, we will respond, certificate holder will respond in writing to your physical address. If you don't provide an address, no email, no physical address, you will not be able to participate in the subsequent process. We will have no way to communicate with you and respond. So what to expect? So first and foremost, certificate holder and the department are going to be trying to determine if your comments have been raised with sufficient specificity. So I just read through that. Did you identify recommended findings of fact that you have an issue with? Have you identified a council standard or applicable requirement that you believe is not being met? And have you provided facts or supporting information to support your objection? If you haven't met any of those, the response is going to identify that. One or all of those things. If you have provided comments that meet the sufficient specificity criteria, certificate holder and the department are going to say that. And we are going to either identify where your issue is believed to be addressed and potentially already resolved within the proposed order, or it's going to provide a resolution to your issue if it's not yet addressed. So it's kind of a big step. Again, February 13th, you will be getting this response that has all of these words you may not be familiar with, but that's coming. In the department's response, we plan to provide, helpful information to help you understand how to navigate through this process. And this, this is intended to help further evaluate your comments and make sure that we understand and that we get it right. Okay, so then that's not the end of it. So February 13th, certificate holder and the department are responding. Then you as a commenter will have an opportunity to reply to those responses. And you have a deadline that's already been established in the department's notice. That deadline is February 27th. So you don't have to, but you can choose. If the department or the certificate holder has said your comments were not raised with sufficient specificity, we don't know what standard your comments are related to, you didn't provide any facts, you can then take that and identify the council standard and provide facts. You can disagree. It's a process designed to sort of continue evaluating those comments. And then after you respond, if you choose to respond, both certificate holder and department have a final opportunity to provide reply. Again, ideally, it's a resolution. We will see how that works out. I believe our deadline for reply is March 6th. So that's kind of the whole extent of the comment process. And feel free to ask any of us questions after the meeting. Chris Clark's information will be on a slide later. You're free to reach out to him at any time and ask how this is going to work or how it's working once that February 13th date comes forward. Okay, so there are several acceptable means for submitting comments on the record. You can submit comments electronically through our comment portal. This is a link to our comment portal. If you submit through our comment portal, you will get an email confirmation that you have submitted comments. So please make sure you get that. It is important that you include your contact information and comments you submit on the comment portal so that you have an opportunity to get a response and further the evaluation. You can also submit comments in hard copy by mailing to the department's Salem office, 550 Capitol Street, Northeast, Salem, Oregon. Attention, Chris Clark. And of course, you can provide comments verbally tonight. As I said, this hearing is being recorded. We will have the recording transcribed and that information will be available on our website. Okay, so we're almost getting started with your turn. The order tonight will start with an opportunity for the certificate holder. Then we'll open it up to members of the council. After that, then we'll open it up to members of the public, and after that, we'll open it up to members of the council, and then we'll return to the certificate holder. We may establish a time limit on members of the public depending on how many individuals are interested in commenting tonight. So let's go ahead and start with the certificate holder. Is the certificate holder interested in providing comments?
Testing. That sounded good. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Chair Condon, members of the council. For the record, my name is Kristen Sharon. I'm Vice President for Public Policy and Resource Planning for Portland General Electric. PG is a fully integrated electric utility that has a service population of nearly 2 million Oregonians, and 2/3 of the state's economic activity occurs within our service area. Can you hear me all now? That's better? Okay, great. As owner and operator of the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm, PG has a long-standing history and connection to Sherman County. In 2024, PG, yeah, I can. Here we go. All right, let's try that again. In 2024, PG contributed $7.3 million in property taxes, about 1/3 of the county's property tax base, helping to support schools, parks, infrastructure. Sherman County is a very special place, and the opportunity to represent PG in the community here tonight is not lost on me. But I'm here today to discuss the importance of the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm RFA4 site certificate amendment to PGE's resource portfolio, to our customers, and to Oregon's clean energy and economic development goals. We appreciate the Oregon Department of Energy staff recommendation to FSEC to approve this amendment. The Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm has supplied clean, affordable energy to Oregonians since 2007. Being one of the first major wind operations in the state, there were learning lessons along the way, including around maintenance and performance. And since that time that we began Bigelow Canyon, we have added thousands of megawatts of clean energy to our system, PG and our partners, including wind farm in Southeast Washington, wind farm in Montana, a combined wind, solar, and battery here in Oregon, the largest of its scale to open in the United States. But we are committed to continuously improving and upgrading equipment to increase efficiency and reduce costs for our customers. An ongoing maintenance and overhaul project at Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm to continue safe and reliable plant operations for years to come is well underway as we pursue now adding solar and battery storage to the site. Through this amendment that we're proposing, the addition of solar and battery storage at the site will help to optimize clean energy generation and delivery in support of our customers' growing electricity, clean energy, and emissions reductions requirements. As we plan our system, affordability for customers remains top of mind, and PGE has aggressively pursued federal production and investment tax credits that have reduced the cost of clean energy projects on our system by at least 20 to 40%. To date, PGE and its partners have secured over $1 billion in federal tax credits for our clean energy portfolio to the benefit of our customers. However, recent changes in federal policy will rapidly sunset clean energy tax credits, escalating the long-term cost of renewable energy and storage and threatening customer affordability and the pace of achieving the state's clean energy and economic development objectives. An amended site certificate allows this project to move forward on a timeline that can capture the value of those existing federal tax credits while they're still available for our customers before they're phased out, aligning with PGE and the state's focus on delivering affordable, reliable, and increasingly clean power, while achieving the directives outlined in Governor Kotek's recent executive order to accelerate renewable energy siting. Co-locating solar and wind power generation equipment allows us to take advantage of the existing infrastructure on the site, like transmission lines and substations, and to reduce the overall impact to the land and to the environment. Adding solar capacity complements the existing wind capacity, since wind and solar typically produce peak power production at different times of the day. This allows both renewable energy resources to work together to meet a broader range of our customers' energy needs, increasing PGE's overall system reliability and the value of the site overall to our customers. The addition of battery storage will also provide flexibility to the grid, allowing energy storage when demand is low and its use when demand is high. The right mix of energy resources in the right locations can help reduce reliance on fossil fuels and drive a cleaner, more affordable, and reliable energy resource mix. PG has already made strong progress toward achieving the state's emissions targets, with an overall resource portfolio that is 45% non-emitting as of the close of 2024. And this includes projects like the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm. The site certificate we're seeking today to add solar and storage will further PG's progress toward meeting our 2030 state emission targets. To identify the least cost, least risk portfolio of resources that are needed to meet our customers' current and future energy needs, as well as state clean energy requirements as overseen by the Oregon Public Utility Commission, PG engages in long-term integrated resource planning. In our most recent integrated resource plan updated in July of 2025, PG identified a need to procure an additional 4,500 megawatts of clean energy resources. This represents about a 16% increase since PGE's prior IRP that had been filed only in 2023. Projects like the proposed addition of 125 megawatts of solar and 125 megawatts of storage at Bigelow are critical contributors to this growing clean energy need. PG's all-source request for proposals is a transparent, regulated, competitive process by which interested developers submit detailed project proposals for consideration as we plan to meet our customers' energy needs. The 1,600 megawatts of resources that PG identified on the final shortlist of projects that resulted from our 2023 all-source request for proposals competitive bidding process included the Bigelow Solar Project, was acknowledged by the Oregon Public Utility Commission, and the projects were selected for their potential to deliver affordable, reliable, and cleaner energy. By selecting projects through this competitive process verified by an independent evaluator, PG can add high-value, responsible projects that capture significant federal incentives and reduce costs while meeting the state's growing energy needs. Given the shortened timeline that now exists to capture tax credits, the importance of maintaining a project schedule is paramount. We have partnered with Bright Knight to ensure responsible and timely delivery of this project that recognizes that this is a critical opportunity in time for Portland General customers, the state, and Sherman County. The certificate amendment will allow critical energy need and capacity to meet Oregon's economic development needs and the state's emission targets. So we urge the Energy Facility Siting Council to approve the site certificate amendment recommended by staff, thereby maintaining the development schedule with a final decision in March 2026. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to hand this over to our project partners at Bright Knight to provide more details on the project itself as proposed.
Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, Chair Condon and members of the council. My name is Jess Moline. I'm Executive Vice President of Development at Bright Knight. I've spent nearly 20 years developing renewable power projects across the United States. Earlier in my career, I served as a U.S. Air Force pilot, an experience that continues to shape how I approach complex infrastructure development, balancing creativity and innovation with discipline, precision, and an unwavering focus on safety and reliability. Those same principles guide Bright Knight as a company. Bright Knight is developing over 30 gigawatts of clean energy projects nationwide, with 11 gigawatts located in the Pacific Northwest. Across our portfolio, we are committed to safety, responsible cost management, and building durable partnerships with the communities where we operate. Our team consists of some of the most accomplished energy project development and operation professionals within the entire industry. The team at Bright Knight is like-minded. We want to be part of a company that is a reliable partner and committed to the communities we invest and operate in, and one that has a strong financial backing with leading-edge system design. Our ability to deliver projects responsibly and on schedule is validated by our backing by investment partners at Goldman Sachs, Global Infrastructure Partners now owned by BlackRock, and Cordelio Power, providing the financial strength and stability our utility partners and their customers expect. Optimizing projects to deliver maximum value to customers and communities while minimizing impacts is central to how Bright Knight operates. We have taken those lessons learned and built on that track record here with the Bigelow Solar and Energy Storage Project. You will hear this evening in detail the innovative planning and design that has gone into this project, the increased efficiencies and output that Bigelow will add to the grid, and the best-in-class features to improve operational safety and resilience. Bright Knight is pleased to be here this evening in partnership with PGE to speak with Council about the Bigelow Solar and Storage Project and the steps that our teams have taken to develop a thoughtful, responsibly sited project. Thank you. And now we'll bring up the actual experts.
Thank you, Chair Condon and members of the council. We also want to thank the Oregon Department of Energy staff for their thorough review and the work reflected in the proposed order. For the record, my name is Kathleen Campanella, and I'm Senior Director of Development for BrightNight. And I'm responsible for the development of the Bigelow Solar and Storage Project. I'd like to begin this evening with a simple question. What does it mean to site a project responsibly? For this project, responsible siting wasn't a single decision or a single mitigation measure. It's a principle, excuse me for that. It's a principle that affected nearly every aspect of the project's development and engineering. It shaped where the project is located, how the site boundary was drawn, how impacts were avoided and minimized, and how remaining impacts are addressed. I want to briefly summarize that approach and how it is reflected in the department's analysis. I'll start by discussing co-location. This is a renewable energy project, and by definition, it delivers an environmental benefit. But like any infrastructure project, it also has impacts. Responsible siting means acknowledging that reality and finding the option with the least impacts. Co-location is just that. For this project, it integrates solar and battery storage with the existing Bigelow Canyon wind farm, therefore reducing the need for new transmission lines, new access roads, and disturbing additional land. Another core element of our approach to responsible siting is community engagement and listening. This allowed us to better understand and address local concerns, resulting in a design that is responsive to the community's voice. We participated in dozens of one-on-one conversations with local leaders, neighboring landowners, agricultural producers, and community members. Finally, I want to highlight our outreach and coordination with local organizations and public service providers, including county departments, agricultural and conservation groups, economic development entities, and emergency service providers. These discussions are reflected in project plans and in the conditions of the proposed order that ensure ongoing coordination with public service providers. Taken together, these efforts reflect the same responsible siting approach I referenced at the outset, anticipating impacts, engaging early, and responding in a way that aligns with local priorities. With that, I'll pass it on to Todd to discuss vegetation and wildfire management and project safety considerations.
Thank you, Kathleen. Chair Condon, councilors, my name is Todd Elwood. I'm the Senior Permitting Director for BrightNight. BrightNight and PGE have heard from the very beginning how important vegetation management and wildfire risk are for this project. We appreciate the input received from ODO staff, the reviewing agencies, and the community that have all informed the design of the project and the draft plans before you today. Rather than relying on any single measure, the project uses an integrated approach. Project design, construction planning, long-term operations, and community coordination and investment all work together to support long-term landscape resilience. The goal is to reduce ignition risk, limit fuel buildup, support early detection and response, and strengthen regional wildfire preparedness. The project is designed to reduce risk from the outset. The layout, materials, access roads are all planned to minimize ignition sources, break up fuel continuity, and create defensible space around solar panels, the BESS, the substation, and related infrastructure. The project has been designed to exceed fire code requirement by maintaining no less than a 20-foot non-combustible buffer around the perimeter of the site. This conservative approach reflects our commitment to fire safety and directly responds to input received through outreach with local fire agencies and local and neighboring landowners. Wildfire mitigation is addressed during every phase of the project. There will be dedicated wildfire mitigation plans, for both construction and operations, including equipment standards, weather-based work restrictions, active monitoring, and coordination with fire agencies and local responders. There will also be emergency response plans for each phase of the project and training for all contractors as well as local responders. The project will use low fuel vegetation. Restoration seed mixes are comprised of native grasses and forbs that produce less biomass, cure more slowly, and do not create continuous fine fuels. Our proposed seed mix will reduce the need for repeated mowing or treatment, which in turn lowers ignition risk from maintenance activities. We also take a proactive approach to noxious weed prevention. Rapid revegetation, clean equipment practices, and ongoing monitoring help prevent invasive weeds that increase fire risk and reduce land productivity. Over the long term, vegetation management continues through the operation and maintenance plan. This includes regular inspections, adaptive management, and ongoing fuel load control for the life of the project. Soil stability and erosion control are also key parts of this strategy. Proper soil handling and restoration will reduce weed invasion and help prevent conditions that can worsen wildfire behavior. Revegetation and weed control contractors will be held to stringent qualification standards. All of these measures help protect adjacent agricultural and rangeland uses by reducing the potential for wildfire spread beyond the project site. Did it advance? Taken as a whole, our commitment to a comprehensive management program demonstrates the project will coexist with and not undermine ongoing agricultural use in the area. As previously mentioned, the use of setbacks and micrositing also help ensure the project will be compatible with neighboring farming operations. Bright Night has implemented setbacks, buffers, and will have 3 2,000-gallon fire water tanks outside the perimeter fence that can be used by our neighbors. The proposed order contains numerous conditions to require accountability and long-term enforcement, and we support staff's recommendations. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand it off to Lena to discuss Goal 3. Yep.
Chair Condon. Always going to forget the microphone. Chair Condon, council members, my name is Lena Cope. I am a environmental specialist with Portland General Electric, and we wanted to cover a couple things regarding the Goal 3 exemption and a little bit more information about the community investment plan. As you heard from Chris's presentation, the staff is recommending that the Goal 3 exception be approved based on the locational dependency and the creation of rural economic benefits. As Kathleen spoke to earlier, co-locating the solar facilities with this particular location is very important to take advantage of the existing transmission lines, surplus capacity on those transmission lines, and existing BPA substations. The rural economic benefits will be realized through the implementation of a community investment plan, which was developed from extensive community engagement and listening. The plan includes pre-screening projects identified through outreach, such as dryland wheat agrovoltaics, agricultural wildfire risk minimization and capacity building, fund matching for soil and water conservation district programs for wheat farmers, next generation farming innovation and technology training program, and capacity building for wheat growers. So those are the pre-screen projects included in the community investment plan. The plan also includes provisions for additional projects to request funding and a local governance structure through the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District. The analysis of indirect economic impacts performed during our amendment preparation indicate that 1,600 acres per acre of farmland taken out of production prior to starting construction will be applied to the fund. This is in addition to the projected $40 million in property tax revenue. And we also estimate that on average, there will be 165 union workers on site each day during the approximately 18 months construction period, generating additional spending in the local community. In addition to staff's acceptance of RFA's locational dependency and rural economic benefit reasons,
PGE will be advocating for the council to recognize the project's consistency with state climate goals and policies. As Kristen discussed in her comments, the site certificate amendment to add solar and storage will further PGE's progress towards meeting our 2030 emission targets mandated by the state. And for that reason, we will be requesting the council recognize an additional reason to support the Goal 3 exception, and we will provide additional evidence in the written record to support that request. Okay, I also want to touch on operations and maintenance. We know that there are community concerns with the past maintenance and performance of the Bigelow Phase 1 wind assets. PGE's ongoing maintenance and overhaul project has been addressing those concerns and root issues, and Dan will be speaking to those in just a moment. But regarding the solar and battery, as has been mentioned by previous speakers and the staff's presentation, the proposed order requires a standalone O&M plan to be approved by the department with review and updates if needed on an annual basis. The O&M plan covers ongoing inspection, monitoring, reporting, and enforcement by the department at a level not previously specified in the existing Bigelow site certificate or any site certificate issued by the council previously. The plan will also integrate commitments from the other major operational plans, such as the comprehensive revegetation and soil management plan and the operational wildfire mitigation plan. The content of all the plans is informed by the department's involvement in other recent solar and battery projects and addresses the challenges faced at those sites with the goal to reduce those challenges at future sites. The development and approval of the plans are mandated by the site certificate and will be reported on for the life of the project at varying frequencies. In addition to all those improved details and specific requirements, the department itself has put significant efforts into their compliance program, has additional compliance staff, and retains the authority to inspect the facility and require corrective action if anything is found to not meet the requirements. And now I will hand it over to Dan.
Thank you, Lena. For the record, my name is Dan Wilson, and I'm the Director of Renewable Operations for Portland General Electric. In addressing the age and the material condition of the Bigelow Wind Farm, at its 18-year age and after a long period of stable operation, the Bigelow Wind Farm has shown an increase in equipment failures over the past 4 years. And this has signaled a condition of age-related degradation, a trend that we confirm by benchmarking against other industry leaders. In direct response, we have implemented a comprehensive and proactive enhancement plan to secure the asset's future reliability. The key strategic actions include, first, to operate and maintain, we have hired a new service provider that is an industry leader for all wind generation. The performance of the service is reviewed by PGE's leadership to ensure top-notch compliance to the maintenance standards. Second, we've increased inspection frequencies for key components. Third, we are executing a critical redesign and replacement program for the obsolete and failure-prone V82 pitch systems, which have been a primary source of downtime. Fourth, after completing the pitch system replacements, we are cleaning the towers, hubs, and blades. In summary, the wind farm's current condition reflects its age, but we are actively mitigating those risks through a targeted capital enhancement and maintenance strategy. The centerpiece of this effort, the pitch system overhaul, directly addresses most of the significant historical failure mode, positioning an asset of improved reliability and extended operational life. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from public comment, and we'll return after our closing. Thank you.
You didn't advance this? There. No. Is there a separate presentation that goes on now?
Why is it the last slide? Okay. Okay, thank you, certificate holder representatives. We'll now move to members of the public. Nancy, could you confirm how many comment cards we have? While she's doing that, is there anyone in the room that would like to provide verbal testimony tonight that has not filled out a comment card? If you could raise your hand. Seeing none, okay. 5. And if you are on the webinar or on the phone, could you raise your hand if you're interested in providing verbal testimony? Or she can call up. Do you want to do a time limit on 5? Do you want to do a time limit? Let's do 7 minutes. Okay, so we have 8 individuals that are interested in providing testimony, and the council has an opportunity to provide comments and questions, and the certificate holder can come back. So we're going to put a 7-minute time limit on your comments. Note, you can provide comments all the way through January 30th. Can you put a timer on the screen? Okay, so will you stand up and wave your hands when your timer goes off? Okay, so I'm going to let you call the commenter since you have the cards. Okay, so again, just as a reminder for any individuals that wish to provide testimony tonight, please state your name, identify if you're representing anyone other than yourself, and confirm your physical mail or email address, or make sure that it's written on the comment card. Okay, now we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, our first commenter is Kathy McCullough. Come on up, Kathy. Okay, and just so you know, go ahead and come on up. I'll start the timer when you start to present. And then I'll just raise my hand when you have 1 minute left to go.
And then just a note, if you're going to use the pictures as part of your comments, we'll just take photos of them. So, but we need you to do that before you take them away, because once you enter them into the record, they're part of the record.
Should I sit down or stand up?
I mean, probably sit down because I don't think standing up that's going to pick up on.
Okay. I can talk loud. There you go. You just put it closer.
Stand, just pick that like this. It's a whole lot.
Okay. Thanks. So pick up the whole thing?
If you're gonna
If I
stand
need
up,
to.
you need to have it
Okay.
close to your.
I think I can sit. Kathy McCullough, and I live right under the project, about a half mile from the PG building. And I'm a retired 747 captain for Delta, and I'm also a microbiology, environmental health graduate from Colorado State. When this project was first started, you wouldn't have found anybody more excited about it than I was, because to me, these looked like giant propellers. I loved it. I wanted clean energy and wind, and we could farm around them. That was the best. In fact, it helped us. We got new roads, we got in and out of fields we could never get into before. It was amazing. We were probably the biggest proponents of this project until construction was great. The first 5 years, great manager, new equipment, everything was perfect. The next 10 years, horrible. I mean, horrible. We were picking up pieces in our field. There were nose cones dropping. They all started leaking, all of them, in phase 1. And the culmination was when a blade dropped, February 2022, waking up my husband and my dog. I wasn't home at the time. This is the blade down here on the ground there. This is our house across the road. It was really close. It was really loud. We had been complaining for a while because there'd been so many pieces. PGE wouldn't listen to us. They really would not listen. And we didn't know what else to do. I mean, even after the blade fell and PGE got All-Tight to come in and start inspecting all the bolts in all 76 of the first Vestas towers, nothing changed. All-Tight came, All-Tight went. One company before them said it was the greasiest mess that they had ever seen and it was unsafe and they quit. They had to throw their coveralls away after one day. It was one of those things that we knew would happen. We'd been watching. This is what they still all look like. That they haven't gotten better. They aren't cleaner. None of them have. There's one that has the new prototype on it, but 4 years after the blade drop, nothing has been fixed. They have all the parts ordered, but nothing is different to us. And in fact, the old Brad Jenkins, who was in charge of the project before, lied to the newspaper and said, just because they're dirty outside doesn't mean they're dirty inside. Well, I have a picture of the inside. It's horrible. The wiring's cracked. It's really bad. And they flat out lied to us. So my problem is, how do I trust this company for solar in a county that is so fire prone you would not believe it? Our fires, this is under Bigelow. This is one of the fires we've had. We have 6 to 10 fires a year during harvest and around the dry season, and they're scary. I mean, they move fast. My neighbor barely got in the car and out of her house as a wall of flames was coming towards her. We all run to fight them. We all have water on the back of our pickups. We have shovels, we have hose, we have everything like that. But they still move fast, and I mean fast. There are probably 50 pickups and farmers fighting this fire. And this was a couple of years ago. And it's just one of the many. And if I trusted PGE with their wind, I can't trust them with their solar. I can't trust that I'm safe in my house if they're not going to be honest. And if they're going to tell people that we lie. There's a whole new regime at PGE now. I admit that because I like Dan. I like the people who are there now. And I think we're on a different tack. I think we're going a different direction. But unless it's in the site certificate, they're not going to do anything. And most of this amendment is construction. Very little of it concerns actual operation once the construction phase is over. We really need a strong site certificate. Even with PGE knowing all that, they never reported anything until I went to the paper and got the Oregonian to write 4 months after, no wait, February is when the blade dropped. And I think the paper, maybe September, came out and there was no change, nothing. They knew pieces were dropping. And I'm glad they have new maintenance. I really am, or new people, but we've got to have a strong site certificate. We could not get them to give us a hold harmless clause for farming. So if we accidentally start a fire and it burns into their facility, that's that's a $2 billion facility we don't have money for. The only other thing I was going to say is Bright Knight's got great idea, for fire, and as a 747 captain, lithium ion batteries are scary. They are just plain scary. My vinyl siding on my house melted in 2021 to the west side. That's how hot it gets there. So if you don't have good protection, you're in trouble. So this is how they look. They say, oh no, they look great. They're white, they're clean. Yes, they are. This is how the transformer boxes look
that PGE has under the towers. How am I supposed to think that the batteries are going to look okay? I just, so I hope, I understand we have to have this green energy mandated, et cetera. Can we get some real teeth in this site certificate? Can we get some real help out where we are? And if there's a fire, please don't let them sue us so that we can't farm anymore, because we only have 5 million liability. We can't pay for that facility. We've never started a fire during harvest, but we fight 4 to 6 a year. Well, no, 6 to 10. So they happen all the time. One of these days, it's going to be our turn.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comments. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's see if I can take it all away
You are
without
welcome
dropping
to
it.
ask questions whenever you want. You will get a designated time, but you can ask whenever you want.
All right, so our next commenter is Kevin McCullough.
Obviously, I'm Kathy's wife, or husband, oh, excuse me, Kathy's husband. I farm underneath the project. BGE has not done what they said they were going to do. And now that we have new management, this is a good thing, but they need to prove that they can operate this. I don't know why you would give them a certificate to put in a solar farm when they have not proven that they can operate what they have. They keep saying they need more green power. You know how many towers we have sitting every day out of those 217? 40 to 50 every day. Makes no sense to me why you would be willing to give them a certificate to build a solar thing until they fix this problem over here. It's bizarre to me. And the other thing is the fires, like she just said. It's not if we start a fire, it's when we start a fire. And your setbacks aren't even close to deep enough to keep us from having to pay. They're going to sue us. And we will no longer be in business. So thank you for your time, and hopefully you take some of this into account.
Okay, my next commenter is Colt McCullough.
Good evening, everyone. Should be the last McCullough commenting, I think, unless there's some that I don't know about. My name is Colton McCullough, and I am the current farmer on the land that the proposed project would be built on. As some of you know from experience and have learned recently, Sherman County is extremely wildfire prone from late May through October. My main concern with the proposed project is both fire starting within the project and fire starting outside the project and burning into the project. I farm on nearly every side of the project and potentially in the middle if approved. Sherman County is an agricultural community with the primary crop being wheat. Wheat harvest typically happens in July and August. This is when the crop dries out and can be harvested, but it is also when it is most likely to burn. We do a lot to prevent and stop fire, from always having a firefighting pickup and tractor with a disc in the field, to preventive maintenance on our combines and other equipment, to putting fire breaks around houses and other infrastructure, to shutting down on days of extreme heat and high wind. Even taking these precautions, there is no way to eliminate the chance that we will start a fire. As they've said, it's not if, it's when. I do my best to prevent fire and will continue to do so, but I am very worried about starting a fire and having it burn into the solar facility. I carry a large liability policy, but not even close to large enough if I burn up a solar facility. There is no economical way to carry a large enough policy. I don't want to lose the farm or have my son lose the farm because we burn a solar facility sited in the middle of wheat fields where seasonal fire risk is extremely high. I have been told that the panels will not burn, and that may or may not be true, but that doesn't mean that they won't be damaged or melted by the heat of the vegetation burning below them. The best way to reduce the fire risk in the solar project is to reduce the amount of vegetation available to burn. Under the request for amendment 4 currently submitted, it is suggested that the maximum height of the vegetation be 12 inches year-round. This is far too tall and would be a significant wildfire risk during fire season. Under the proposed order submitted by ODOE, it is suggested that vegetation be kept to a maximum height of 12 inches during the rainy season, November to May, and 1 to 3 inches during the dry season, June to October, for all areas within the solar fence line, along with several other stipulations on page 233 of the proposed order. I strongly support ODOE's suggestions and feel that it would make the project a safer and far less likely to have a wildfire. This small change in management practice would drastically reduce the wildfire potential within the solar facility. From what I can tell, ODOE changes would go under the Comprehensive Solar Revegetation and Soil Management Plan, although redlined in by ODOE. If this is the case, I would like to see some other language addressed in that section, as it currently states this is only the plan in the interim until an operational wildfire management plan is put in place. It concerns me that there is no operational wildfire plan to be reviewed yet, and PGE's system-wide wildfire mitigation plan may be used. PGE's system-wide wildfire WMP primarily focuses on power transmission and some limited information on the generating facilities. It is not a site-specific plan that considers specific wildfire risks for a project like this in a location like here. I would like to see language saying ODOE's vegetation height and clearances suggestion would be implemented into the operation wildfire mitigation plan and remain a basic requirement for the life of the operation of the facility, if not included into the operational wildfire mitigation plan. Basically, I want to see the vegetation height suggested by ODOE be a permanent, not easily amended part of the facility requirement throughout the operation of the project, and not be ignored because the operation wildfire mitigation plan says something different or doesn't specify vegetation height. My intent of publicly commenting is not to show support for or against the project, but to ensure the critical wildfire preventative strategies are used during building and operation of the project. I would like to see the project be an asset to fire prevention in the county, not a risk. I would like to see it be a fire break where people know when the fire gets to the actual project that it is going to be stopped. But there has to be stuff in the site certificate that puts teeth that make them maintain it to this standard. But if vegetation isn't managed properly, it's not fair to ask the farmers and community members around the project to take the risk associated with the solar facility. I want the council to realize that this proposed project is being sited in the middle of wheat country that is associated with very high seasonal fire risk. Setting a standard of vegetation management and making sure that standard is upheld throughout the operations of the facility would address a large part of the fire concern with this solar project. Thank you.
Okay, our next commenter is Mr. Hildebrand.
Greetings. Ormond Hildebrand is my name, and I am not a McCullough. I manage my family's farm, which is near the proposed Bigelow Renewable Power Project, and have been involved with Oregon's environmental and land use issues for years. I am submitting this statement for the record regarding the Bigelow Renewable Power Project. I approach projects like this with the clear understanding that development has impacts. The question is not whether impacts exist, because they do, but whether they are acknowledged, responsibly mitigated, and managed through a rigorous public process. Even farming has impacts on our land. You know, some may argue that our land shouldn't have been put to the plow back in the 1880s, but it was done. Impacts happen. But based on my experience, I am confident that the impacts associated with this project can be addressed appropriately. And I'm confident that after 50 to 70 years of the project being a major solar producer, if we get to that point and we need to have the land back for agricultural production, it can come back to agricultural production with improved soil health. That is critical. I'm a strong believer in clean energy. I've been a director of the Community Renewable Energy Association, CREA, for many years. CREA is a strong advocate for shaping policy to benefit rural Oregon. And I personally have been involved in the development of my own renewable energy project, Patu Wind Farm, which is a 9 megawatt, 6 GE 1.5 SLE turbines that are adjacent to Portland General Electric's Bigelow Canyon. I supply power to over 3,000 homes in the Portland area. That experience has given me a practical understanding of what responsible project planning looks like, including the importance of environmental review, mitigation commitments, and ongoing accountability. You know, we must hold companies accountable for what they say they're going to do. The Bigelow project reflects this level of responsibility. The developer has engaged seriously with the permitting process and has demonstrated a willingness to address environmental considerations. I have attended several of the discussions myself, including a presentation of the North Sherman County Fire District that discussed these fire mitigation procedures. It used to be that we on the east side felt that we had the fire risk all to ourselves. Now that you on your west with the climate change, you have the fire risk too. So I think everybody can appreciate, especially in a rural county where the land and agriculture, natural resources are deeply interconnected, the importance of this fire mitigation. I also believe it's important to consider projects like this in a broader long-term context. Sherman County's economy has changed significantly over time, and the pressures facing agriculture and rural communities continue to evolve. We had, in 1920s, we had over 4,000 people living in the county. That's more than twice what we have right now. We had hotels in the towns and restaurants and theaters. And I've read even Rufus had a golf course. That's all, most of that is gone now. And primarily due to consolidation of farms enabling our producers to reduce their production costs. And they've done a damn good job of it. They've really driven down their costs to compete in a tight environment. And I appreciate people, young farmers like Colton, coming on because we need them to continue this into the future. But it's going to become tougher. Our farmers have to consolidate and they have to become larger. And those that don't are not going to be with us anymore. And can anybody doubt that the drive for more, that we will see more capital intensive equipment powered by artificial intelligence that will continue and further fuel consolidation amongst the farms in Sherman County? Thoughtfully planned energy projects represent one step in a more diversified and resilient future, one that balances environmental stewardship with economic stability. In this case, it is true that solar saves farms. Last month, Governor Kotek issued an executive order to state agencies to move faster in clean energy projects. And recently, even Representative Bentz acknowledged that Oregon will have a critical shortfall in energy unless drastic steps are taken, including expansion of our transmission facilities. The Bigelow Renewable Energy Project is low-hanging fruit with the existing underutilized PGE transmission. While recognizing the project is not without impact, I view the Bigelow Renewable Project as a positive contribution when evaluated through the established FSEC process and supported by enforceable mitigation measures. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the statement and for your careful consideration positive consideration of these issues as part of the record. Thank you.
Okay, our next commenter in the room is Chad Higgins.
Audio check. Okay. Honorable committee, my name is, thank you for the opportunity for me to present testimony and comments. My name is Chad Higgins. I'm an associate professor at Oregon State University and a farmer in Lynn County. My area of expertise is in integrated farming and energy systems, agricultural sustainability, and ag tech. I spent more than the past decade working on ways to integrate solar energy production into agricultural practice and mitigate the conflict between the renewable energy and agricultural production, so-called agrivoltaic systems. I'll keep my testimony to the agricultural aspects that pertain to Goal 3. Broadly speaking, I care deeply about agricultural land protection and agree with the principle that protection of agricultural land is of critical importance. Indeed, my entire research portfolio and a good part of my life's work has been devoted to serving farmers in local rural communities. There would be no farms without the land to support them, but farming is incredibly challenging and requires brilliant folks to do it under the current conditions. It isn't sufficient to simply protect land, as it's only one piece of the puzzle that makes farming possible. An economically vigorous agricultural system depends on the land and soil, of course, but it also depends on the skilled farmers, access to the needed agricultural inputs, access to sufficiently developed agricultural markets, and enough regulatory freedom to allow land managers to adapt to new economic and resource availability conditions. I'm an advocate for balancing agricultural land use trade-offs with energy trade-offs wherever possible, and I applaud your efforts in doing that in a respectful and sensitive manner. My research on agrivoltaic systems has shown that the benefits of shade to cropping systems most critically depend on the dry soil's fertility. That is, crops generally benefit more in water-limiting conditions and with the benefit of good soil. This means that agrivoltaics are appropriate in some locations and not appropriate in others. Note that the proposed project is not an agrivoltaic project. I will say that the three most common criticisms of my research are, one, that I haven't tested any particular crop in a particular region. Ported to this particular region, it would be, you haven't tried, say, wheat in Central Oregon, which is true, it's a fair criticism. The second major criticism of my work is that my experimental trials are small compared to proposed commercial projects. That's also fair. I don't have the money to build a multi-billion-dollar large project for my research. They tend to be of the multiple acre size as opposed to multiple thousands of acres. And third is I just don't believe you, Chad, that this is possible. If you are a critical thinker, you first have to be critical, and I take that challenge on. These are fair critiques, even though I endeavor to perform transferable research for maximum social benefits. My research team and I have done most of our work in the Willamette Valley, a location with drastically different hydrology and soil to here. I will note that we have done a trial in Madras on irrigated carrot seed production that showed consistent results with all of our other studies, and the carrot seed benefited from the energy system. But that trial was limited in scope, and it was not a dryland crop as this situation is. On the point of scaling, I'll take issue and say if I can make it work profitably at a small scale, economies of scale dictate that it should work at the larger scale because you just turn the tractor around less. The main point is that more research is targeted to the local region, specific crops and unique conditions like the fire risk condition that's unique to this area and so critical here. More research would help inform future development in a sustainable way. And I really support the inclusion of the competitive research funding to be managed by the Economic Development District. In full disclosure, I will absolutely enter that competition. And my approach would be to work with the community to address their most prescient concerns and questions. But should I not win, I'll applaud any researcher because I believe that that work would strongly help the community, because it's no secret that there's many projects proposed for this area. Solar siting tends to be local in scope, as you know, but when you find a good spot, there tends to be a concentration in that spot, as you know. And Gillum County here, sorry, Sherman County here, I misspoke, is one of those Goldilocks zones. May the best researcher win. I welcome the competition. Secondly, I do want to say that these projects are long-lived, but ultimately temporary installations. A natural question that a farmer may ask is, what's the agricultural potential of the soil at the end of the project's life? To answer that, my research team, in collaboration with soil scientists at OSU, are in a third year of a multi-decadal study where we rest the soil under solar panels to see the change in soil condition. As part of that project, we're monitoring the soil's health annually, and thus far, at this early stage, we've observed increased soil carbon and fertility relative to the non-solarized control under the same management practice. Of course, there are many years of observation ahead of us here, but the preliminary observations are promising. Finally, I understand if anyone is skeptical of my science, they don't believe that this is possible or that the benefits are there, but I ask you to believe the evidence of your own eyes, and I invite you to come to my research facilities and tour it for yourself. Anyone here on the committee, anyone in the community, I welcome. Please come out. I know it's a bit of a drive from here, but I would hope to make it worth your while. I'm open to the public the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. The location is the North Willamette Research and Extension Center in Aurora, Oregon. Please come out. You're most welcome. And I'll make myself available to answer any questions that the committee has or the community has based on my research in these systems. And yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, anybody in the room that would like to make a comment that has not turned a form in? Okay, go ahead and step up to the mic. Just be sure to give us your name and your address, please.
Thank you. My name is Chair Condon, Secretary Cornett. My name is John Langdon, and I filled out a form and mishandled the application process. I apologize, Sarah. So I do believe Chad, and I do believe Ormond, that solar saves farms. And so I am a fourth generation farmer. My address is 30574 Diamond Hill Drive in Harrisburg. I have some property that has a particular interest for solar. So I've been approached many, many times over the years, and that's led me to have solar companies come to us with proposals. And there's always been a level of understanding and education there, but I got to go to a meeting like the one last night, a letter of intent meeting, where I got to see Todd in action. It was pretty impressive. And in that meeting, I decided that I needed to educate myself on the ag and solar world. And so for the last 30 months, there's rarely been a day where me and my partners haven't taken that path. We were at Chad's facility on Tuesday, and I think that was our 30th tour in 30th month. And every time we learned something new. We bring a lot of solar developers, a lot of VIPs. We actually had some shepherdesses out there last time. And our mission is to learn all we can about ag and solar working together, communities, agricultural systems, agricultural neighbors, all of those things together, and try to educate myself to be qualified to speak to it and help other people, whether it's this council or farmers or developers. So we also, one of my partners likes to travel, so we went to Europe. We heard that they do it better over there, or they're ahead of us, so we went to Europe. We've been to a multitude of countries and saw a lot of different projects. A lot of those were farm projects. And quite frankly, after dozens and dozens of conversations with developers in multitude of countries, Bright Night is great. They've done a great job. I've been in multiple conversations with them about vegetation management. One of the things that we've done in our learning is we've had the opportunity to become vegetation managers. So we are vegetation managers in Oregon. The best way to learn something is to go do it. So we've done that. And we've looked at every system we can find where agriculture and solar works together in ag communities and with farmers and with those systems. And I can tell you that the conversations with Bright Knight have been as outstanding and as advanced as anyone I've had in the world. I would trust them with my land. So what I'm telling you is these guys seem to be listening to the farmer. Todd and Kathleen have been, I think they're genuinely interested in the community, the farmer, making it work, making it great, and making it a win-win-win for everybody. And so I would encourage the council to look upon them favorably. So, thank you.
Okay, anybody else in the room that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to the people on the webinar. Just as a reminder, if you are in the webinar and you would like to raise your hand, at the bottom of the main window, is a set of icon. Click on that participant and you'll see a hand icon. You're going to click on that to raise your hand, and you will click it again to lower your hand after you have commented. If you're on the phone, press *3 on your keypad to raise your hand, and then again press *3 to lower your hand. Okay, so our first commenter is Dan Hildebrand. Oh, no, he lowered his hand. Okay. If you need to, you can raise your hand again, Dan, if that was a mistake. So we're going to move on to Miss Irene Gilbert. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, Irene, don't touch your button. I'm unmuting you. I think we're playing a game back and forth right now. Okay, she's not working. All right, can't get Irene on. So Dan, I see your mic is open. You go ahead with your comment.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm representing my brother and I, Randy. He's since we inherited the ranch from my father, he's now the general manager of our operation. We represent the 4th generation of Hildebrands farming our ranch. And it's been a struggle, as it always has been, since Orman and I grew up on the ranch. As kids, our family every year worrying that we were going to have enough yield with the price of wheat combined together. And it's always been a struggle to be an efficient farmer. Now with the exponential increase in not only equipment, but the inputs of the farming practices, it's been that much more of a struggle. The nice thing about this project is going to give us some more flexibility and continuity as far as the dependability of our economical strength to keep the farm going and make it a sustainable career rather than a constant financial gamble. Approving the Bigelow Renewable Project is a decision to keep the farmland in production and diversify the economic base of Eastern Oregon. And we want to be responsible stewards of the ranch and the farming in general. And this will provide a more predictable revenue stream that we can depend on. And this is not going to replace farming. It's just going to help support and diversify it. In the past, farmers have had very few opportunities to improve. The wind turbines were one of the first ones. A lot of people were skeptical of the wind turbines, and we still do to this day. And one of my first concerns when I heard about this is I was very positive on it, and I thought it was a very good thing for us. And I went to one of the public comment meetings at the Wasco Activity Center there in Wasco, and was pretty confident in what I heard coming from Bright Night and where they were going with it, and they want to be good in this project. I really feel with the input as far as the wildfires go, yes, we do have them from time to time. It's only in the summer, and it's something that farmers, we grew up as kids, that's something that you always had to concern yourself with, and it's just something we've grown up with along with the wind and everything else. The project itself, the 1,400 acres, represents about, according to Randy, about 1% of the total acreage, and so it's not going to replace farming in any stretch of the imagination. Originally, when Randy and I were talking about it, he was actually quite skeptical about it. And I said, Randy, look at it like this. We're not farming wheat, farming photons or electrons coming from the sun. We're just farming something else. Our dad was behind the wind turbines. My dad and our Uncle John, Orman's dad, were very strong advocates of it. And I see what it's done for the county and the income that it's helped the entire county, the businesses in Wasco and Morrow and surrounding areas. It's been a very beneficial opportunity. And I had to remind Randy once, I said, Randy, the solar panels are going to look really good outside the windshield, or as you're looking at them through the windshield of your new combine. So I think we can look at this as a very valuable partnership for everybody. And I think with the wildfire, yes, that is a huge concern. It is a very huge concern. I understand that. But that's something the farmers have always had that about 6 weeks every summer. It's just something that we've always had to learn to live with. If there's any questions, any correspondence can be directed in care of my brother Randy at Post Office Box 326, Wasco, Oregon.
I'm sorry, Dan, could you repeat your address for the record?
You can, almost said email. You can send any correspondence in care of Randy Hildebrand, Post Office Box 326, Wasco, Oregon, 97065.
Thank you.
I also, one last comment, I do share Councilmember Royal's ick factor towards the bats and the rat. They're nothing large flying rats. So I stand in solidarity with her and her.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Hildebrand. Looks like our next commenter is going to be Amanda Whitman. Amanda, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic. You are ready to comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda Whitman, and I am the district manager for Sherman County Soil and Water Conservation District. I've lived in Sherman County for about 16 years now. And one of my concerns is that no one from this project has contacted the district as far as conservation issues that would arise with the construction of this project, or the outcome of the construction of this project. In the past, we have been very involved with the original wind farm projects in Sherman County. And I have noticed with the solar that is not the case. They like to meet with me once and listen to what I have to say, but they're not listening to what I have to say. So that is a concern. We had significant erosion issues with the one solar project that has been implemented in this county, and there was damage to neighboring land from that project. A lot of this land is prime farmland, and it is also highly erodible land. So no matter how much rainfall we get in the county, we still have major erosion issues that go along with that rain. I have asked multiple solar companies about the long-term effects of solar on our soil and water tributaries, long-term effects, and no one has given me any answers on that. So there's a lot of concerns that the district has with these projects, especially these larger scale projects that could really affect our watersheds in the county. The other thing, as far as fire goes, we have been working for over a year now with Natural Resource Conservation Services, NRCS, to incorporate a fire break project in the county to help with these fires that come through our county every year. And you mentioned that you were going to put in 20-foot buffers. The minimum for NRCS is 30 foot. And that is the absolute minimum they're suggesting. So it's imperative that I think they talk to the partners in this about what they're suggesting. USDA has been active in this county for many years, and we know the land, we know the vegetation, we know how fire moves, and I think that's very important. Another issue is the weeds and annual grasses. We've seen that with other solar projects and wind farms. There's no immediate control over weeds. The Russian thistles in this county, for instance, grow rapidly. They don't need water. They catch on fire very quickly. So if we don't have weed and annual grass control around these projects, it's going to be detrimental. Trying to think what else. I think those are my main concerns. I did not plan on talking tonight, but I felt like those were a few things that I needed to bring up. The Conservation District has been in this county for 75 years now. We've had over $2 million worth of conservation work implemented in this county, and a lot of these projects take out those conservation practices. And then what do we do to fix that? We're going back in time on all of the work that we've put in to fix our riparian areas. And I know you think it's upland, but upland affects riparian and the streams and the rivers. So those are my main concerns tonight, and I will submit a letter before the comment period is over. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Whitman. All right, well, I'm going to circle back to Ms. Gilbert. I do not see your hand raised, Ms. Gilbert, but if you are interested in commenting, please just raise your hand, and that will bring me, oh, she's got her hand up, and she's unmuted. Go ahead, Ms. Gilbert.
Hello, are we talking now?
We are talking.
Okay. Irene Gilbert, 2310 Adams Avenue, La Grande, Oregon. I'm co-chair of the Stop B2H group, and I've spent quite a bit of time representing the public interest before FSAC. So I do have I haven't done a thorough review of this, but I will say that the people who do the presentation did a very professional job, and I appreciate that. My concerns rely along the lines of the fact that this group has a really poor track record in terms of compliance or holding their people accountable for following the site certificate conditions. And specifically the ones that really jump out to me are the fire plan and the noxious weed plan. Now the statutes require monitoring and mitigation plans, and what has been happening with the site certificates is that they're approved with a lack of details regarding what is to be included in the monitoring and mitigation plan. And site certificates are issued, but those plans are not finalized until after the public process has ended. So based on that, I believe there's a really an important issue in that the draft plans need to be very detailed, very specific, and include the requests that are being made for specific mitigation methods. And I have not found that to be the case so far. It becomes even more important since the Oregon Department of Energy has been making changes to monitoring and mitigation plans without amendments to site certificates. So it's making it difficult for landowners and the public to trust that the site certificates are actually going to be complied with. One thing that I'm really very concerned about is the fact that this site certificate references the use of the Public Utilities Commission wildfire plan once the operation of the development begins. So you're working on this for the construction period and getting a lot of feedback. But if you're using the PUC fire mitigation plan without adding specific local criteria, what ends up happening is, for example, developers rate fire hazard differently oftentimes than local areas. So, for example, with the B2H transmission line, Idaho Power found no high-risk areas for fire across any of the 5 counties that transmission line crosses. So I think it's important that it be more or less cast in stone that this area will be treated as a high-risk area in terms of fire. The other thing, the issue of landowner liability for damages to their facilities as a result of fires. And I was glad to hear the last person comment on this. 20 feet is not providing the protection or the mitigation for that risk to the property owners that are facing the risk of being sued for damages to the area. I personally think 30 feet is not enough. I would say that in order to issue a site certificate that mitigates for that risk, there needs to be some research into how far do these fires jump when they are in a wheat area, and assure that the no fire zone is wide enough to actually provide that. The FSAC makes a determination about significance of impacts, and it's not going to be a significant impact. But I just wanted to remind you that that does not exclude the fact that the developer is supposed to mitigate for all of the impacts. They are to leave these agricultural landowners basically at the same point as they are going into this, by addressing the increased risks that are created by this development. Certainly, one of those increased risks is that they could be sued for a fire that happens on their area, jumping into this new development. At any rate, I'm going to spend some more time looking through these, and we'll make some specific comments and reference the mitigation and plan statutes, which I understand is required for this. But I do think that while it's a good start, the drafts of the fire and also the noxious weed plans are not developed to the extent that the public can have any kind of assurance that you're actually going to be, number one, implementing mitigation that leaves the public free of risk or addresses the increased risk, or that the monitoring is going to be adequate to assure long-term protection. The plans don't address, for instance, state requirements for weed management. And there's been a lot of concern from the tribes, from individuals, about the level of weeds that are being spread by these renewable energy projects. And I would really encourage you to require the developer to comply with the state requirements and to leave the landowners financially free of the consequences of having to go to the county and file against a developer because they're failing to manage the weeds according to the state statutes. I guess that's enough. For once, I didn't use my 7 minutes, I don't believe. Anyway, thank you for your time. Any questions?
No, there are no questions. Thank you for your comments. All right, so at this point, I see no other hands raised. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to provide a comment? Last call.
Okay, so now we're going to provide an opportunity to members of the council to ask questions or make any recommendations to staff.
Chair Condon, this is Marcy.
Thank you, Marcy.
First of all, I would like to say I wish I had been there in person, but nonetheless, thank you to everyone who took the time to so clearly state your concerns. One of the things that I've most appreciated about serving on this council is it has been absolutely educational for me, not just as an Oregonian, but professionally. Sarah, to directly respond to your request about comments to staff, I'm well aware of the separation between the Department of Energy and the Oregon Public Utility Commission, but I strongly encourage and ask whether it's just to, and I'm happy to do some of my own research, but I'm really concerned about our limits that I'm aware of that may or may not align with what can be done elsewhere. So for example, like I know we can't say, oh, you must have blank number of people, or we can't say you must double whatever the average, standards are or exceed minimum standards. But I really would like to know that there's a way to provide some more assurance to the public. It's no secret. I've said it probably every meeting since we started talking about wildfire. Someone mentioned that PGE's plan tends to lean towards I don't know if they said transmission or distribution, but anyway, I really just am curious if there are things that we can glean from other areas that can align and help the public get some of the reassurance they need. And I would just encourage the developer to really think about how they can invest to the public to meet some of these things, because while you as a developer have a lot of risk, this is their livelihood, this is their legacy, their communities as well. So I believe, I have to believe people are operating in good intent, but I really hope that the comments around the noxious weeds and the wildfires are really, really taken to heart. And lastly, I'll just say that anyone who's participated over the last couple of years has heard this council talk a lot about organizational expertise. And I think we heard a lot of comments directed at that today. So I hope the developer plans to address those things to provide reassurance to the public and to our council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grail. Any other comments or questions from council members? I have a question.
Madam Chair, I'll be second.
Yes. Nope. Go ahead, Councilor Devlin.
Okay. Madam Chair, I don't know if I have a statement or a question. It seems to me that, some of the things that people are talking about in terms of past performance is actually some agreement on. I mean, within the statements from staff, there was some statements about the fact that the actual performance, and particularly on the first phase over time, has not been what was expected. Obviously, some of the people that are critical of the proposal are saying that very clearly. And even the applicant is now admitting that some of that performance has been less than desirable. Now, the problem I have is I don't have an answer for this. I'm not an attorney. I'm not our representative from the Attorney General's office, but we have specific criteria that we view every project in. And I'm not sure that we can actually apply or create a new criteria that in a sense tries to enforce perhaps some shortcoming from a past approval or the performance in a past area. I'm just not sure of that, how you would do that, or if it even could be done in a manner that would be, let's say, where litigation would be limited. The second thing is I clearly doubt that this body has any authority, and I'm not even sure the legislature would have authority to limit the liability of various parties that might be involved in something that would cause damages to another. I mean, that's clearly outside the purview of of this council. And I'm not even sure about all the ramifications of that, if that would even be within the legislature's purview on a statutory basis. I just want to put those comments on the record. I do think the concerns are real. I do think that turbines wear out. I do believe there have been quite a number of issues with them, particularly that sort of first phase. And I don't know which generation of turbines that was. I know turbines are actually under an enormous amount of stress over time. It's interesting that one of the speakers is a former 747 pilot, and she's obviously probably aware of the metal fatigue in aircraft over time, and the fatigue in the blades of those turbines. There are significant issues there also, and I just wanted to put all that on the record. I'll be probably thinking about what our actual authorities are, but I clearly believe people have made some clear and to a large degree some compelling arguments.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Councillor Perry, do you have your hand raised? I can't see it. But
Yes, I did. Thank you.
yes, feel free. Yes.
Thank you. I did have a couple of points, and along the same lines as Councillor Devlin was mentioning, first of all, about the fire concerns. It seems like when there's a concern with property owners and developers, as a planner, there's been situations where, a covenant not to sue would be in order. But that's not something that this council has any purview over. That's more like Councillor Devlin was saying, a legal matter between the owners and the developer to work that out on who's responsible for what on the property. But on the other point I wanted to make was about, as a planner, I've, had situations before where we have a property that, may have a violation on it of some sort, and then they want to come in and apply for a land use application to do something else. And if there's a violation on the property, then you wouldn't necessarily want to approve or be able to approve based on the regulations of that local jurisdiction to approve and a new thing on our property if there is some kind of a compliance issue. And I'm new to this. I'm not as familiar with the administrative rules and the citing standards as our experts are in the staff and secretary in our legal office. But I was just, I guess, a question now to the staff. Chris, would there be some kind of regulation that I may not be aware of that would prohibit the approval of an amendment to an existing site certificate when the existing site certificate's requirements may or may not be satisfactory? But in looking through the staff report, it looks like you have addressed those, and with the addition of some additional amendments to the conditions that were placed on there that would remedy some of that. And I was just wondering if there was anything that the citing council needs to consider on that situation where we have, if we look at if the existing facility is in compliance with everything, then there isn't an issue with moving forward with looking at specifically this in relationship to that with the addition of the solar to this siting certificate. I just wanted to make sure that that we're covering all those bases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. And we have Christopher now at the mic.
Thank you, Councilmember Perry. For the record, this is Christopher Clark, Senior Siting Analyst. Just since you called out me specifically, I will respond with two things. One, I think the relevant standard is the organizational expertise standard, and so I'll just read that at least in part. So the standard provides that to issue a site certificate, the council must find that the applicant, or in this case, certificate holder, has the organizational expertise to construct, operate, and retire the proposed facility in compliance with council standards and conditions of the site certificate. I am not aware of a separate rule that would prohibit the council from approving a facility if there were a violation in place or something like that, or a requirement to cure. I do want to point out, though, and I think this is important for the record, at this point in time, the certificate holder has not been issued any notice of violation, or I maybe can be corrected, but even a notice of non-compliance for these issues. They have been responsive to the department's requests for corrective action plans and things like that. So there have been a number of compliance issues at the facility, and that is well documented, but not violations themselves.
Thank you, Christopher. Councillor Perry, sorry, was that a thank you, or did you have something further?
No, I think we just kind of talked over each other. I was just thanking Chris for that response.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do have a question, but I'm wondering if the McCulloughs can come up to the microphones. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can go first.
This is Kent, and tonight we heard a lot about organizational expertise.
Hold on just 1 second. Did you, oh, sorry. I thought you had a question.
No.
Sorry.
Organizational expertise, or the noxious weeds and vegetation management. But we did hear regarding wildfire, a recommendation from the SWCD to, I think it was 35 feet. And that probably has some science behind it that could withstand a challenge or whatever. So I think we ought to kind of look into that. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. And now a question for you. And I think one of the things this meeting has really brought into focus is our work on compliance. The wildfire rules are pretty new to us. I think we're now in our 3rd year of wildfire rules and working through projects and what's appropriate, what are compliance issues. And every step we go through, we learn more. But one of the things that has been very opaque to me, and it sounds like you are big supporters of renewable energy and certainly went into this project with great enthusiasm. Yes, passion and enthusiasm. And it worked well, and then it didn't. And so I am wondering, one, some of the issues you have as underlying property owners of the project. I guess I have operated on the thought that all the underlying property owners have an agreement with the developer. And in those agreements, there are some provisions that we asked about here. It's simply not necessarily open to us we don't have the authority to do much with it. So could you enlighten I know some of it is proprietary information, but speak a little bit about the leases, and do your lease agreements speak to anything that you spoke to us about today?
What do you think? If you're looking at me blank, you probably know more.
You're talking about are you talking about
Solar
the
or
wind leases or the solar?
Well,
okay.
Well, right now, it sounds to me, I guess the premise for my question is, it sounds like it's just a matter of understanding and coming to some agreement. It sounds like The developer is really now concerned with compliance. You've certainly suggested that they have been more proactive, but in your agreements with them,
Right.
does it call for action of compliance or are you depending on us?
We're depending on you because after 10 years of reporting pieces and our concerns and having them ignore us and lie to us, we don't trust them anymore. And since the blade fell 4 years ago, more towers are down than ever. And we're just stymied. We don't know. We're not signed up for solar because we would not sign up for them, period, after what we've seen with the wind.
Okay.
And it's not really addressed in the lease, but it's in the site certificate. And no, there are no violations on PGE because they never told you guys. Hello?
Well, and as I see at this meeting, we've talked a lot about it, and the last, 5 meetings, some of these issues have come up and are now being addressed, and there seems to be a plan going forward. And I'm wondering if you are aware of that, part of are you included in those conversations with the developer? And okay, all right,
You can answer that.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we are. And the PGE crew that is there now have been very open and coming and talking to us and wanting our opinions on how things are. But it's just, we have a lack of faith in PGE right now. They haven't proven anything to me. They are a disappointment, unfortunately. They need to keep moving forward and figure out how to fix this and then prove to me that this is going to work, because they haven't done anything yet other than shut the towers off because they're dangerous.
Well, you presented your message well, right, or at least in my opinion, and I thank you for being here and sharing your experience. But I also, just given the wildfire mitigation risk, if you have some ideas that you don't see in the draft mitigation plans for construction, or that should be there on the solar project that is now proposed, the more detail you can give to us and staff, the better it informs us for our decision making.
Okay, and since Colt is actually farming now, he's
My biggest issue is there's. Is it on now?
Yeah.
My biggest issue is there's no operational wildfire mitigation plan to even look at right now. So how am I even supposed to comment on something that doesn't even, I don't have privy to it. So all I'm going off is what the Odo is saying that they're going to put in the interim, but then I'm not going to have any say when it actually comes out.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And it's, I know it's coming. We've heard that, and just keep your ear attuned.
Okay.
Yes.
And just as an aside, even Bright Night hasn't been forthcoming with us. This is like the 4th or 5th representatives that have come through that, that are now the experts. And we were told that the panels weren't going to be within view of our house, and then they were right across the road. So we just panicked, and our landlord is the one that got them to move them back. Everything we've been promised, somebody reneges on, and it's getting really frustrating because we feel like we're just in a wave that we can't stop. We keep hearing the right things. We just haven't seen them.
It's not in writing. Until I see it in writing from now on, I will not believe it. It needs to be put in writing and signed by whoever the proper authority is, and that's what needs to happen. I used to do business on a handshake. Not going to happen ever again. I had really good intentions with PGE and their wind project, and they kept telling us they're going to do it, but they kept cutting their maintenance budget on the project. How do you, I don't know how you run anybody's farm or you do anything. We spend money on our equipment to keep it up. and make it work. So we're not going to be out there intentionally starting fires. Their solution was not to do anything. With this new management team, I have great hopes.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here and coming up twice
Thanks.
and having such strong representation. And I'm wondering if PGE wants to come and respond, or you don't have to. It's just, okay, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, yeah, listen, and I will say, and you've heard from all of the, all of the council members spoke today, and these are of real concern to us. The issues that came up today are of concerns with this project, but overall, they have been a real area of focus for us. So, thank you for being here for the hearing, and if there are no more comments from the council, I'll turn this over.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so to close this out, would the certificate holder like to respond to any comments you've received to date or heard this evening?
Chair Condon, members of the council, and folks in the room this evening, thank you very much for your time and energy and for the input. I'll just say two things, then I'll hand it over to Lena to wrap us up here in response to what we've heard tonight. So one, I think to reiterate, we recognize that some of the concerns raised about the operation of the Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm do not meet the standards for excellence that PGE expects of all of its sites, and we are taking appropriate actions. We also operate thousands of megawatts of clean energy across this region with an excellent track record of safety and reliability. With regards to wildfire, let me reiterate, the safety and well-being of the communities we serve is paramount, and we recognize the existential risk of operating a utility today in the West amidst growing wildfire risk from climate change. We maintain and implement robust wildfire mitigation plans as required by the state and submitted to the Oregon Public Utility Commission on a regular basis. Those plans are evaluated by an independent evaluator, by the safety staff at the Oregon Public Utility Commission, and it is through a very public process with robust stakeholder input. We just submitted our most recent wildfire mitigation plan in December, and it is currently under review. Right now, we're forecasting about $120 million annually in wildfire mitigation investments to protect the safety and well-being of the communities we serve. And that includes things that have been discussed tonight, such as grid hardening and vegetation management, situational awareness, so think risk modeling, as well as the use of like AI panoramic cameras. It includes operational procedures across our system, distribution, transmission, and generation. And it includes the work that we do with our communities around education and outreach. So wildfire safety is important, and we continue to evolve our wildfire mitigation plans in response to changing technology, improving technology, as well as evolving industry best practice, and unfortunately, the growing risk of wildfire in this region. Thank you.
Thank you. We just want to again say that we appreciate all the comments and people taking the time to review these documents. Come here in person to provide your testimony. We will review all the comments and provide written responses. But we do want to reiterate that the level of detail in the plans and the monitoring, the inspection, the reporting, and the enforcement by the department in these plans is at a much greater level than any previous plan. The department staff and the staff that we have supporting the development of these plans have identified these improvements to the site certificate and associated plans, and they have teeth. We heard, we want teeth, and we believe these plans do have that. Additionally, in the written comment, we will be submitting our communications log with stakeholders into the record to show our outreach to stakeholders. Okay, and with that, thank you again for your time, and get home safe tonight.
Any final comments or questions from council to the certificate holder? Okay, thank you again, certificate holder. I need to amend one statement that I previously made about the comment deadline. So all comments must be received by January 30th at 5 PM, not submitted by, but received. So if you're paper mailing your comments to the department, make sure you've mailed them in a manner that they can be received by our office on January 30th at 5 PM. Okay, so it is now 8:20 PM on January 15th, 2026, and the public hearing portion of the comment period on the proposed order for request for amendment 4 of Bigelow Canyon Wind Farm Site Certificate has concluded. I'm going to hand it over to Chair Condon to close the meeting.
Chair Condon, if I may.
Secretary Cornett.
Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. Our process is designed to include public participation, local participation. That's why we're here. It works better if there is good, robust participation. So I encourage you, if you have comments, please do submit those comments. As you've heard from the council, we take them very seriously. So please do comment. Thank you.
I want to add my thanks again for everyone who came to the hearing tonight, and especially those who sat through the whole meeting tonight. So thank you. The time is now 8:21, and the January 15th, 2026 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Cindy.